Aloha and good afternoon. It is 1:11 p.m. on Wednesday, August 21st, 2024, and I call the Committee on Housing, Sustainability, and Health to order. I'd like to welcome Committee Vice Chair Kia Aina, Councilmembers Okimoto and Toba. Councilmember Dos Santos Tam is excused. Pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-3.7, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony remotely or in person in the council chamber on all items on the agenda when each item is taken up. All persons who register to testify in person will be called upon first, followed by those who register to testify remotely. I'd like to also welcome Councilmember Tupola to the chamber. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to testify following the registered testifiers. For those standing by remotely, please utilize the Zoom raise hand feature to indicate your desire to speak. For those joining us by telephone only, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, press *6 to unmute yourself when prompted. Before testifying, each person shall state their full name and will be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes at a remote meeting be conducted by a roll call unless unanimous. I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. Don't believe we have any council members participating remotely at this time. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones, and we'll move to agenda item number 1 for action, Resolution 24-194, confirming the appointment of Dr. Leanne Kealoha Fox to serve on the Climate Change Commission of the City and County of Honolulu for a term to expire on June 30th, 2028. I believe we have Dr. Fox present. Thank you for being here. If you wanted to go ahead and unmute the mic, identify yourself, and maybe go ahead and just share a little bit about the work you want to do on the commission.
Absolutely. Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Kealoha Fox, and it's really an honor to be considered for the commission. I want to thank District 2 and the team for having a meeting with me this week so I can share the importance around climate change, the impacts on health, and how we can do much better to serve the residents of Oahu through equity.
Mahalo for that. We'd also like to recognize Chair Waters in the chamber as well. Aloha. Any questions for the testifiers? Seeing none, thank you, Dr. Fox. We'll go ahead and go to testimony. Clerks, do we have any registered in-person testifiers for this item? I don't see any registered testifiers. Anyone in the chamber wishing to testify that's unregistered can come up. Seeing none, we'll go to virtual. No registered virtual testifiers. Anyone online wishing to testify can use the raise hand feature on Zoom to identify your desire to speak. I'm seeing none. We'll go ahead and close testimony, and members will go into discussion. Was there any discussion for this resolution? I did want to just say mahalo again, Dr. Fox, for your willingness to serve, for making time to talk story, and just for really being willing to bring your expertise to the city. I think it's really valuable, and look forward to your service, and thank you for being willing to serve.
Mahalo, Chair.
Yeah. The chair is going to recommend that Resolution 24-194 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. And we'll move to agenda item number 2, Resolution 24-198, establishing a Homeless Solutions Advisory Committee for purposes of advising the council on ways and means of ensuring a coordinated and collaborative approach to making homelessness in the city rare, brief, and non-recurring. I don't know if we have anyone from the administration on this. It is council initiated, so Councilmember Okimoto, did you have any thoughts? I know we've talked about it extensively, so if not, no worries, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to share any ideas or thoughts you had.
Thank you, Committee Chair. And I know that I had approached you with this earlier, and I'm grateful for the discussion that was brought to the body before. We did, change it into a resolution. The intent really was to, I shouldn't say really think us out of the box, because homelessness is still at the top of the minds of much of our communities. And while there are resources and other organizations out there, really I saw this as an opportunity for us as a council to receive advice and insight from experts who have been involved in addressing the issue of homelessness, but maybe even had been a part of it, have experienced that in their own lives. I thought this was a fair compromise. I understood the concerns of Council Vice Chair Kia Aina with having to put this on the ballot. So this was another way to address it, to have this advisory council be a voice for us. It's a really good opportunity for each council member also to, with each district being able to select, and it doesn't have to be from the district per se physically, but if a council member feels like there's an advocate or someone in their communities or in their workings where they could add a valid source or insight to how we can tackle homelessness, that's what this was. And we have homelessness is an issue statewide, but definitely Oahu has our own unique difficulties. And so I'm hoping that we can have a good discussion and that the purpose of this will go forward, because while there are people who may say that there's many other organizations, this will be specific as we move forward to make sure that the legislation that we produce as the body that we have here, that we're getting the advice that will be pertinent to us in our decision making. So thank you, Chair, for letting me share that with you.
No, I appreciate those sentiments. And we'll go ahead and go into this testimony as well. We don't have any registered testifiers online or in person, so we'll go to unregistered. Ms. Young, if you wanted to identify yourself and proceed when you're ready.
Sure. Aloha, City Council. Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES in strong support. So homelessness is a problem which requires collaboration across districts with multi-agency response coordination to discuss an action plan. And so we're going to need health experts of mental health, substance abuse, addiction problems, and healthcare, appropriations of funding to provide for that, as well as coordinating with offices to free up resources. So also perhaps it can consider partnering with the church, because sometimes the homeless response is, for example, you're imagining it to be like a service that's going to help them when in fact they don't respond to Institute of Human Services as well as they do respond to the church. So yeah, those are for your consideration, to consider partnerships with churches. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none. Anyone else in chamber wishing to testify, please come up, identify yourself after unmuting the microphone, and then proceed when you're ready.
Thanks. Aloha, my name is Summer Yadao. I'm in support of this resolution as well. As we all know, houselessness is a huge growing problem, mainly because we don't have rural affordable housing. So I'm glad we're also going to be addressing Bill 46 later. But I also wanted to bring up Auntie Twinkle Borge, who was, pivotal in taking care of our houseless people on the Waianae coast. And it was because of her big heart and her just care for the people that she was able to not only have that houseless encampment at the Waianae Boil Harbor, but also be able to purchase land up in Mauka, right? So we visited up there, and they were getting their things together, and then unfortunately she passed recently. So I just wanted to remind everybody of her and to move forward with her in her heart, knowing that this is an issue that is not just for houseless people. I myself was houseless off and on since I was 14, and it's a systemic problem. So we have to hit it from every single angle, from the public, like the previous testifier, churches, just everywhere, because in essence, it affects all of us in every way.
Mahalo for that. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none. Anyone else wishing to testify may come up. Otherwise, we'll go to online unregistered. If you want to testify, you can use the raise hand feature to identify yourself. And seeing none, we'll go ahead and close testimony and go into discussion. Was there any discussion from the committee? Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Okimoto. I'm appreciative that this isn't going to be a ballot initiative, and I still appreciate the efforts, and thank you for the kind words that were said about Auntie Twinkles. Her service is on the 15th of September if you guys want to come. But I do feel like, because I do a lot of this in my district, and actually last night at our neighborhood board, almost the entire meeting for 2 hours was about homelessness, that I just had two thoughts, or maybe more, but on the be it further resolved, and I will work with Councilmember Okimoto if she's in favor. You know, there's A through H on the suggestions of what the advisory committee would do, and I think it's too extensive. I think that a lot of the people who we have working with us as volunteers for the city, we kind of task them with a lot, and you know, it's their own free time. So what I saw was like letter B, letter D, and letter G are similar. So letter B is promote, letter D is provide guidance, and then letter G is, again, monitor and promote. So B, D, G seem very similar to me, and that seems like something an advisory committee could do. And I think last night, one of the things that we had was like, specifically, our community was trying to give Director Cookie feedback. So he was trying to present Honu as coming into the community, and actually they voted against it. So I think that like this advisory committee should possibly advise or just give feedback to DCS on the programs that they're suggesting for the community, so that before they hit a neighborhood board or whatever, that they're kind of getting like other feedback, because actually there was quite a bit that people had. And so I think if this was more of just like us being able to give DCS feedback within our own communities on what's working that the city's doing, what's not working, so that they could better refine it. And I think instead of having their own committee, that we should maybe talk with the mayor and see if these members can sit on the mayor's task force. Because in the mayor's task force, which they have every month for homelessness, I felt like that was the most productive space to be in. Because then after this committee meeting, you wouldn't even have to transfer notes, because everyone sitting in that meeting are all the executors of homelessness. Director Cookie's there, Director Ireland is there, Sam Moku is there. Like everybody in the city who does this is in that meeting. So I think it would just like kind of expedite the feedback straight to the mayor's team, because they're the people executing it. And then if their role is to kind of give feedback on just what the city stuff is doing, I think that would be a lot easier, because I think advocating for funding, identifying grant opportunities, like I think you could still suggest that. Like if you've ever attended the mayor's meeting, they're always open for suggestions. I just think that the feedback on what we're doing for homelessness is what's really needed. So that would just be my suggestions, is if they could join the mayor's task force, if we could combine B, D, and G to be just really like, these are the general things you do. Provide and promote the things that we do in the city to your communities, because a lot of people don't know what we do. Give feedback to the mayor's team on what we're currently doing and how your community is either liking or not liking it, and then attending the the task force meetings where you can. So just some thoughts. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Okimoto.
Yeah, definitely appreciate the thoughts, and we'll take them under consideration. I don't think personally, I don't have any issue with any committee that does materialize collaborating with the task force being conducted by the administration. In theory, it could even be some of the same people. Just going to note for the committee under Council Rule 9A that the purpose of the committee is to advise the council, right, in our duties in both terms of policy making and also budgetary decisions, which I think will also be done in collaboration with the administration. And so I'm completely flexible in my perspective, and would be intended just to raise the measure as written for passage, understanding that all the different components, I think, help inform council members who would be picking people to serve on the commission, right? I think that having folks from any of these different areas that could bring specific insight and knowledge, understanding that collectively when you have the different perspectives and backgrounds and experiences at the table, we can oftentimes come up with innovative and tried and true measures that we can use to respond to the problems in our community. Did you have any? Yeah,
yes,
we're in discussion. So
are we in discussion?
Yes, go ahead, Vice Chair.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. And I think, and thank you for addressing my concerns with regard to making it a charter amendment, because we have two critical charter amendments that are going to be on November relating to the Commission on Ocean Safety as well as the Salary Commission, right, the CAP. And so having said that, I guess I just want to make sure as we move forward that we do it in a fashion that is in coordination with the administration. And so I want to know, how are we reconciling the concerns that have been raised by Corporation Counsel relating to some overlap with the Office of Housing? Are we going to invite them up here to answer questions?
Yeah, I would leave that to Vice Chair. I believe Director Kirky from Community Services is on his way. I do appreciate the perspective that was provided by Corporation Counsel, understanding, of course, that the case law they cited was very specific, right, and concerned the council specifically approving, I think it was concession permits, right? So clearly executive action, and which is undoubtedly, I don't think without question, within the purview of the city administration under the charter. Again, we're operating under Council Rule 9A, establishing a committee with specific direction to provide guidance to this body, right, as a co-equal branch of government that has to make policies. If you want to ask Director Kirky when he gets here, more than happy.
Actually, Corporation Counsel, is Corporation Counsel here?
I believe we do have, so I'll defer over to Vice Chair for questions.
Good afternoon, Jeff Lau, Deputy Corporation Counsel.
I guess my question to you is, without having to go into executive session, what can you publicly share for us with regard to your concerns and whether or not you believe that this measure needs to be modified to allay the administration's concerns or Corporation Counsel's concerns about executive authority versus council authority?
I believe our general position would be that certain modifications would need to be made based on the concerns that we raised in privileged communication with the council. Just generally, there was a case law that Council Chair mentioned, and it kind of outlines the respective roles of the legislative and executive branches. I would have to...
Well, I guess I'm asking, do you want, if this were to pass out and move forward, are you guys going to oppose it?
I think there would need to be certain adjustments made to the language, and I can't
okay,
really
so
go
what
into
you're
detail.
saying is that in an ideal world, you would want it to be modified. And I guess, Chair, the reason I'm saying this is if we want to work together, then maybe we should consider that. As you know, we had this question relating to the establishment of the Oahu Historic Preservation Commission, and we did push the envelope and told the administration to prove to us that the law was invalid, that we were amending. And at the end of the day, we ended up passing a resolution giving the mayor the authority to establish the commission that would go in tandem with the bill that eventually stood up the Oahu Historic Preservation Commission. So I feel that this is an issue where clearly we all support the intent. And so unless you are considering modifying it when it goes to the full council, would you not want to modify it prior to it going to the full council? Because you only need one committee hearing, correct?
Correct. And I know our Office of Council Services Director is busy. And so I'm not going to burden our council attorneys who also have legal experience and drag them into the committee right now. You know, I think my intention, of course, if you intend to object or vote no, of course I'll differ. I think everyone's entitled to their own position. Again, I think in terms of the simplicity of what's being discussed, again, outside of the role that the executive branch plays, you know, under council rules, we as a body can seek input to provide, you know, insight to us, right, as a council, and under Rule 9A can create these types of committees. And so I think that was the intent. I'll defer to Councilmember Okimoto as well, but in terms of my intent, it wasn't in any way to supplant the administration's
No, I understand,
work.
but my question is, so is it your intent not to make any modifications before it reaches full council? should you move this out? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to suggestions. After reviewing the legal analysis provided, I found no need to. But
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Yeah, yeah.
So you determining that, okay?
Yeah, but if you feel like there is or anyone else does, I'm happy to entertain
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Committee Chair Weyer, for speaking, in support of this, because I think what you said exactly, this is not to in any way overstep our boundaries or try to replace what the administration has, but as a body, what can we do when we're going through our process of thinking of and creating legislation to address the homelessness issue? This is what this was created for, to advise us. And if there are modifications that Corp Council feels are needed before this continues, I have always been open to having that discussion. But I would hope that this isn't, the discussion isn't based on whether or not we're trying to, again, overstep our boundaries. And I appreciate you saying the statements of this is the purpose of what this is, what has always been, and that's been to advise us. And to be fair, there are many people in our communities who reach out, and some are, really qualified and they have a lot of good input. They're not a part of these other commissions or other groups that are already established. And for me, it's always been important to represent the voices of our communities. And so anybody that we can have really positive, valid input, that's what we're looking for as we go throughout our responsibilities as the council body. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And we do have Director Krupke here. I'll invite you if you would like to opine. I don't know if there's a question for the administration as well. And again, we're on Resolution 24-198. This is relating to the Homeless Solutions Advisory Committee.
As Chair and Council members, Anton Krupke, Director, Department of Community Services. This is really your initiation on this measure. As you think through it, there are a lot of layers of advisory commissions to homeless, everywhere from national layers to the interagencies, the state layers with their offices, our office, and we meet weekly as a homeless group, just focusing on that. And then many of the people in the community are on boards of social providers that work on this. The point I'd make for your consideration as you think through this and get to where you're going to get to is what engine drives this group? How are they going to get their information? How are they going to do that? Because each of the ones I just described have an engine behind them to do the work, or are they going to be dependent on someone else? Just for your consideration as you think through this, Chair.
Really appreciate those sentiments. And again, speaking at least for myself, the goal I think is to create just continued dialogue and opportunities for, having more informed policymaking, right? And I think that comes through collaborating with the administration. I can say that I've already contemplated who I would ask to be on the committee. I would assume some of our colleagues have as well. And so I don't think we're necessarily gonna conflict, I don't think, with any of the work that's going on, but maybe just position ourselves to enhance. At least that's my position, understanding there's been some perspectives and disagreement shared. Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Director Krupke. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think, Director Krupke and I work a lot together, and my perspective is the same as his. I mean, I honestly think I wouldn't recommend anyone for my community because I need all my community people to be on the ground. Because I have 4 nonprofits that run outreach, and if they want to be on those boards, they got to be there. If they want to give me input, I need them at my homeless outreach. 4 days a week, I need them standing by me, helping me, doing the work with me, walking the beach with me. I also think that, the State Homeless Advisory Committee and the one that the mayor does, for me, those two have been really open to having anybody join those. So I think for me, and again, it's everyone to their own, I have a very on-the-ground approach to this, and if anyone in my community wants to do that, and I'm saying that as somebody who has actively tried to find legislation that we can craft for homelessness for this council, but the reality is we don't really legislate homelessness. I'll be honest, there's no specific laws. So what Director Krupke does, with HONU or with CORE or those, we fund it, we support it. But and I'm telling you this because I wanted to write so much legislation for homelessness, but I had a hard time finding anything that we actually touch, stuff that we actually affect change in. So the most recent change that I did, and I'll just share this with everyone, was working with Partners in Care and with DHS to realign all of the homeless regions with HPD districts. But that was not something I had to do legislatively. We actually worked on the state level, and it was an administrative thing that we're changing so that when they cut the new contracts, that my officers will line up with the regions of homelessness so that our CPT officers have the same outreach providers no matter where they are, because mine and yours overlap, Chair. And that's hard for me when I have half my guys in Wahiawa and Kapolei instead of Kapolei and Waianae. So again, I thought that I could legislate that. Then when I dug into it, there's no legislation for that. It's actually got to be on the state side how they cut their contract. So personally for me, because I haven't found any specific laws that we necessarily touch, I haven't found a lot of need for us to understand the policies as much as I need a lot of boots on the ground people that are willing to do outreach, people that are willing to do, licenses or do documentation. And so personally, I feel like I really want us to keep the solutions that we do as ground level as possible so that we can see an impact. But again, it's up to you, Chair. And of course, Councilmember Okimoto, I definitely support your intent and I hear what you're saying.
Appreciate those sentiments and agree, in terms of a lot of the laws we pass, for sure, don't affect homelessness. Of course, the biggest legislation we do is the budget, and I think that does directly affect the homelessness. And of course, not here to point fingers, but I know as we've gone through the course of budget discussions, there's been discussion about voucher funding and how that should be allocated and how much should be allocated, where CDBG funds go in terms of housing opportunities, where, core services could go in terms of expanding outside of the urban core. There's a whole host of things that we fund and services that we fund, and I do think it would be awesome for us to collectively look at how do we make the budget a little bit more responsive to homelessness, especially when we have so many community members right now being impacted by it, both those that are experiencing it and also those in our community as well. I know we do have a full agenda. I welcome any other discussion on this. Councilmember Kiaina.
Yes, thank you. I made a commitment to the two of you that I would support it via council authority versus charter amendment. I still believe that it is not a matter about funding at the county, state, or federal level. In fact, there's lots of funding. The greatest challenge for all of us is capacity for the various partners to get the job done, whether it's the providing of services, providing of land, for emergency beds, for transitional housing, for long-term housing. So I just want to make sure that so I do support it, but I don't want us to naively think that this is going to be the end all and kind of be the overall guidance for us, because we have various mechanisms to make up our decisions, yeah? So this is just another avenue for the various stakeholders to collectively look at the array of kuleana that you have delineated to provide to the city council guidance on the complexity of homelessness, correct? So I just don't want, when we have maybe discussions, that we throw out a recommendation and say that this is it and this is the way we have to go. I am hoping that we can still have independent thought on how we deal with our homeless issues. I'm assuming you guys are okay with that, right?
Yeah, welcome that discussion. Appreciate it,
thank
Vice
you.
Chair. Seeing no, Chair Waters.
Thank you. No, I want to thank you as the chair of this committee and Councilmember Okimoto as the introducer of the measure in advance for not only coordinating the selection, providing the meeting room for the participants, staffing of the meeting, providing the minutes of the meeting, and writing the report to the council in advance. That those are logistics that are needing to get done. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Seeing no further discussion, thank you, Director, as well. Chair is going to recommend that Resolution 24-198 be reported out for adoption. Any reservations, objections, or discussion? Hearing none, so ordered. Mahalo, and we're making good time at 1:40 with several more agenda items remaining. We'll go to agenda item number 3 for action, Bill 38, 2024 FD1, amending the Oahu Watershed Management Plan. Members, I have submitted amendments to the bill, and it is available online as Council Communications 216-2024. The proposed amendments would amend the plan to recognize the Kalaha'i Fish Pond and Kanawai Spring restoration as the Mauna Lua Fish Pond Heritage Center's initiative. For your information, we have a presentation and it is available online as Departmental Communication 616-2024. I believe we have the program manager from Board of Water Supply's Water Resource Division, Barry Usagawa. Mahalo for being here. If you wanted to identify yourself, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Madam Vice Chair and Council members. My name is Barry Usagawa. I head the Water Resources Division in Honolulu Board of Water Supply. We have a short presentation. I'm going to turn it over, if I can, to our consultant, Ms. Melissa May of SSFM for a short presentation, and then we'll be available for question and answers after that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Melissa May. I'm a planner working with the Board of Water Supply as a consultant on the East Honolulu Watershed Plan. I am also a planning commissioner, although I'm not here in that capacity. Just wanted to acknowledge that. So I'm here today to share an overview of this plan, since this is the first committee meeting, rather. So let's just start running through that. Thanks, Barry. Okay, so I'll do a quick overview of the plan and the planning process, talk about how the community has been involved, where we are in the adoption process, and we're happy to answer any questions. So the goal of the East Honolulu Watershed Management Plan, or EHWMP, it's really intended to be a holistic plan that balances preservation, restoration, and management of watersheds with sustainable groundwater and surface water use and development over the long term. And there's these shared objectives across watershed management plans to promote sustainable watersheds, protect and enhance water quality and quantity, protect Native Hawaiian rights and traditional and customary practices, facilitate public participation, education, and implementation, and meet water demands at reasonable cost. So it's part of a larger framework of the Oahu Watershed Management Plan, and you can see that here. East Honolulu is one of 8 watershed management plans for Oahu, and they correspond with the planning districts on Oahu, and they fall under the Oahu Watershed Management Plan and the larger planning framework shown here. And they're really intended to follow a ahupua'a concept model to take into account Mauketimakai watershed issues, not just focusing on groundwater supply and utility service, but really looking at how Mauka resources affect Makai and the overall water supply for the island and these districts. So this is the planning district that's covered by the plan, and it basically extends from Kahala to Makapu'u. You can see the different watersheds included here as well. So our task in preparing this plan was to do some baseline research. We identified what the key water resource issues were for the district. We analyzed what the water demand was for the district and what that looked like currently as well as over the long term. This is about a 20-year plan. And then we looked at what options there were to address that long-term demand as well as the critical water resource issues through policies, projects, and strategies for implementation. And we rolled all of that into the plan, which is now before the council. And you can see that there was community meetings and stakeholder consultation throughout the process. And this is what our schedule has looked like. We've been actually at this for quite a few years now. We're near the end in the adoption stage, and yeah, each of the stars represents a community meeting along the way. So when you look at the plan itself, it's broken down into 5 sections. There's an island-wide overview of water resource issues and data. There's a Chapter 2 drills down into East Honolulu and the characteristics of the district. Chapter 3 covers water demand and supply for the district. Chapter 4 are the implementation policies, projects, and strategies that will address the issues that have been identified. And then Chapter 5 is implementation. And the plan has a framework that's supportive of, making sure that these policies and projects and strategies get implemented. So it has a framework of objectives, sub-objectives, issues and values, projects with champions, and general strategies. And there are a couple of catalyst projects that we've identified that really are supposed to help move the needle on the critical issues identified. So there were 8 critical issues, water resource issues identified for East Honolulu, and those are shown here. Climate change, sea level rise, nearshore water quality, water conservation efforts, maintaining traditional and customary practices, flooding and drainage, access to Mauka and Makai areas, and wildfires. And an example of the sub-objectives for the district that help drive our strategies are, I think I went over the first 5, and we put district-specific sub-objectives under each of those, such as increasing native reforestation, xeriscaping, restoring fish ponds. So basically the sub-objectives under those 5 main objectives are all district-specific. And then we identified 31 projects with champions, which I think is more than any other watershed management plan right now, because there's just a huge level of engagement and activity in East Honolulu around watershed issues. That's really to the credit of all the organizations doing work there. So we worked with the community to identify these 31 projects and to show that they're going to contribute to the future of water resources in the district. And in addition to those, we have a number of strategies and programs, and they're things that are not necessarily already underway or have a designated champion, but they've been identified as things that would also help further the water resource needs of the district. And then the catalyst projects, they kind of coalesce some of the main actions that are needed, and the first one is to improve water quality in Honolulu Bay. Many of the district's organizations are focused on this in different ways. There's people working on it in the forests and the watershed, and there's people working on it in the bay itself and everywhere in between. So all the watersheds that drain into the bay are identified as priority for that. And then Catalyst Project 2 is really a district-wide effort to increase water efficiency, because the district gets the vast majority of its water supply from outside the district, and it also has a higher per capita water usage than many of the other districts on the island. So that was a really big focus, as well as how to increase conservation and water efficiency. So this just shows Catalyst Project 1. Some of the various projects that together will make that impact of increasing water quality in the bay. And many of them are led by Honolulu Watershed Hui or Livable Hawaii Kai Hui or many of the other organizations that are active. And then Catalyst Project 2 has some specific goals of water usage per person through 2040, and then further into the future, looking to 2100, because by then we'll be seeing impacts of climate change. There may be droughts and impacts to water supply. So the goal for 2100 is to reduce the per capita water demand to 130 gallons per person per day. And some of the things that are going to contribute to that are infrastructure renewal and replacement of BWS's system, conservation incentives, and looking into developing R1 recycled water for irrigation in the district. So I just wanted to really briefly touch on all the community involvement that went into this. We met with many different organizations, officially 26 different stakeholder consultations, 12 neighborhood board presentations to the 3 neighborhood boards in the district, and 4 community meetings, as well as some of the elected officials. And we had good participation in the meetings. There were, between 20 and almost 200 participants in the different meetings. And then we also did targeted focus group meetings with the Honolulu Watershed Hui and Kamilonui farmers. And then bringing us to where we are today, we had a draft plan that went out for public review near the end of last year. It was out for a few months and accompanied by a lot of outreach and a community meeting. And then on that public review draft, we received 43 written comments and we made updates. I won't go into detail on all of them, but they're listed here in general. And then once we made those revisions, we released a final draft. And we did another round of presentations to neighborhood boards and received 28 more comments. So those were incorporated before we submitted the final draft to council in May. And we did ask the neighborhood boards to vote on endorsing the plan in our last round of presentations. We received unanimous endorsement from the Hawaii Kai Neighborhood Board, and Kuli'o-Kalani'iki had 7 votes in favor, 2 against, and Waialae Kahala was 4 in favor and 4 abstained. And so now we're in the adoption process. We had our first council reading on July 10th, and today we're at the first committee meeting, and we have a few others lined up as shown here. The first reading, this is just a quick summary of what happened there, and the bill status is posted online. And as mentioned by the chair, we did receive some amendments, which were supported by BWS in their testimony. So here's a quick summary of those amendments. And Barry and I are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Mahalo for that presentation. I'll turn first to the area council members if there are any questions. Chair Waters.
Awesome, thank you. Not so much of a question, but just a thank you for all your hard work. I've been in the community and saw you guys participating at the neighborhood boards and other community gatherings, and looking over the document, it's so impressive, so thank you. I just want to point out a couple of things I especially liked, the policies and programs and strategies. Yeah, I mean, this comes directly from the community. Objective number 1, promote sustainable watersheds, right, with the sub-objective of increasing native reforestation and implement measures to slow down the spread of invasive species. Implementing preventative measures to reduce wildfire risks, prepare for the anticipated impacts of sea level rise, conserve natural shorelines to protect beaches and coastal ecosystems. Objective number 2, protect and enhance the water quality and quantity, right? Objective 3, protect Native Hawaiian rights and traditional and customary practices. Objective 4, facilitate public participation and education, which was clearly done, and I know you folks are going to continue to do so. Objective number 5, meet public water demands at a reasonable cost. So, and each one of these have sub-objectives. So very, very thoughtful, very, very well done. And I know my community has appreciated that as well. And then lastly, I wanted to point out the projects and champions, right? The Kalau Ha'iha'i Fish Pond Restoration, the Wailupe Stream Restoration, Kuli'o Watershed Retrofit, Kamilonui Watershed Kipuka Restoration, Kamilonui Watershed Sustainable Agricultural Pilot Project. All those things that you folks have put in here shows me that you really did work with my community. So appreciate it very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. If there's no further discussion at this point, we'll go to testimony. Mahalo again for the presentation. I believe we also have Board of Water Supply down for testimony as well. So I don't know if there's additional testimony, but after the presentation, anyone else unregistered wishing to testify can come forward. Seeing none, we'll go online. No registered testifiers online. We'll go to phone number. It's an 808 number ending in 989. You could please state your name and proceed. And I believe you may need to unmute by pressing, is it *6? Madam Clerk, yeah, *9. *9 to unmute. And again, that's phone number ending in 989. If you're able to press *9 to unmute. Looks like you're unmuted. You can identify yourself and proceed.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, can you hear me?
We can. You can identify yourself and proceed when you're ready.
Yes, aloha, can you hear me? This is Tara Rojas, and I am in support of this Bill 38 for the East Honolulu, but all for all Oahu. Aloha, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, this is Tara Rojas, and I am in support of the Oahu Watershed Management Plan. I know you're speaking about right now the East Honolulu, but again, for all Honolulu, all Oahu. And as I was reading the amendments, and it's, yeah, and as I read the amendment, this is really what needs to come to the forefront and to be in place so that we can restore Ahupua'a mindset. As noticed in the amendment, in the values about how the areas, you know, especially the fishing areas, it says, and large fish ponds. And so sorry, I hear an echo myself. It's kind of hard to testify. And as well, it says like the issues, you know, just the need to protect, because we're just in the Commission Water Resource Management meeting. Today, from 5 to 7 is the Navy Red Hill Shutdown Task Force open house. Another opportunity to make sure they're aware as well of the water need to implement and restore this Ahupua'a management system. In addition to the CRI meeting tomorrow, again, all opportunities to stand up and protect our vai. And I need to say this because how important this watershed plan needs to be implemented, especially trickling into both the county and state agencies that are designed to continue to develop, overdevelop, and trying to implement master plans which go against watershed management plans, and especially protecting Mauka to Makai stream flow. And I'm speaking on behalf of waiting for when the EWA watershed management plan gets updated, because in Honolulu, the Makai side is aimed at the EWA Beach Limu management area.
Mahalo, can you please summarize your testimony or remaining testimony?
So I'll summarize. So just to make sure that this implementation and this is made known in all city and state agencies and actions. Mahalo.
Mahalo, thank you for that. Seeing no questions from the committee, we have no other testifiers online, so we'll go ahead and close testimony. Mahalo, everyone, and we'll open it for discussion before making my recommendation. Seeing no additional discussion, Chair is going to recommend that Bill 38, 2024 FD1 be amended to incorporate all of the amendments listed in Council Communication 216, 2024. Any discussion, objections, or reservations to that amendment? Seeing none, the bill has been amended to CD1 that I'm going to recommend be reported out. Again, Bill 38, 2024 FD1 CD1 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussions, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. mahalo again to the Board of Water Supply for your presentation, all the work that you're doing. We'll move on to agenda item number 4 for action, Bill 40, 2024.
Chair. Sorry, can I ask the question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there any way we could take Bill 41 out of order? I have a town hall I have to be out at 4 tonight in YNIA, and so if possible, there shouldn't be any problem with it. It's just the spade and neuter bill for Humane Society.
I'm amenable to that. Seeing no objections.
Thank you so much.
Committee. Of course, no problem, Councilmember. Also acknowledge the presence of Councilmember Cordero in the chamber as well. Mahalo for being here. So that was, and apologies again, you said Bill 40, yeah?
If we could take Bill 41, agenda item number 5, before agenda item number 4, if that's okay.
Perfect. So Bill 41, 2024 rather, addressing the administration of the public spay and neuter clinic for dogs and cats. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Councilmember, for a description.
Thank you so much. So the spade and neuter law, or the program that we run in the city, is set per the law. So if you guys look at Bill 41, there's actually amounts that we reimburse for male dog, female dog. And so in working with the Humane Society, and because we do a lot of outreach with homeless and animals, we found and met with the director of CSD and thought, if we pull this out and make it administrative, then every few years we don't have to keep changing the rates of what we do our reimbursement, because these are actually pretty old rates too. So what we want is for there to be, it's just changing it to allow the director to set the rates administratively, and then that will dictate how she cuts the spade and neuter contract. So for those listening, we are not doing away with the Neuter Now program. We think it's great. We're just allowing for the autonomy to set the rates. Thank you, Chair.
Of course, and love this actually. It seems to be, I'll go ahead and actually invite up Director, if you wanted to, Director Hashiro, share your thoughts and anything you wanted to add. Yeah.
Hi, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. Kim Hashiro, Department of Customer Services Director. Yes, we do not have concerns about switching this over to administrative rules. We actually think that it will be more feasible, more timely. We will plan to hold public hearings periodically per Chapter 91. And I've been working with the Humane Society, and Stephanie Kendrick is also here if there are any questions for her regarding the programs. But we do intend to work together on this and to update those fees.
Thank you, Director. If there's no questions, we do have Ms. Kendrick registered for testimony, and then we can have discussion after as well. So we'll go ahead and go to testimony. Mahalo, Director, again. To register testifiers, Ms. Kendrick, if you wanted to come forward. See no other registered, anyone in the chamber wanting to testify that's not registered can line up. Please proceed when you're ready. Mahalo.
Hi, Chair Weyer. Thank you so much, and thank you, committee, for considering this measure. And thank you to sponsor for its introduction. This is something we've been struggling with for a few years. These rates are out of date, and as you guys know, changing ordinances can be a challenging process. So we agree with the department that the administrative rules would be a better place for this, so that we can make sure we're keeping up with market conditions and really rebuild these incredibly impactful programs. 10 years ago, we had 10 clinics across the island participating in Neuter Now. Right now we have 5, including our clinic, which wasn't even open back then. And it's really impacted people because they can't get appointments. Even if they can get a certificate, they can't find anyone to get that anywhere to get that surgery done. So we appreciate your intention to this matter, and we hope that we can get this bill passed and make some progress. Thank you.
Mahalo for that. I think Councilmember Okimoto had a question.
Yes, ma'am. Aloha, thank you. I had a question just so I can understand the status of this program. I know we're talking about rates specifically, but with all of our communities and just in general, we get a lot of concerns with feral animals or stray animals. What is the situation right now with a program with the Humane Society when it comes to dealing with animals that are brought in?
Okay, so there's two separate programs under the City's Spay-Neuter program. There's the program for pet animals. So pet dogs and cats owned by people can bring them in for low-fee spay-neuter services. That's one of the programs. And the city actually, for that program, only subsidized payments for people on government assistance. So if your family has EBT or Medicaid or a housing voucher, you can pay $20 to get any dog or cat spayed or neutered, go to a private clinic, and the private clinic will be reimbursed against as to the rates that we're talking about today. We have a separate program for free roaming cats. So that's unowned cats that are trapped by volunteer caregivers, brought in for spay, neuter, microchipping, vaccination, et cetera. And that is a no-fee program for the caregivers, which is something that the city endorsed a few years ago, because even at the low price, I think when the program started, we were charging $10 or $15 a certificate. And some of these people are trapping hundreds of cats a year to try and get them fixed. So the city made the commitment to make that program free to the caregivers. So it's two different programs, one for pet animals and one for free roaming cats. In terms of their status, they're incredibly popular. We did exhaust the funding allocation for fiscal year 2024 for both programs. Feline Fix was exhausted earlier in the year than Neuter Now was, but I don't have those dates for you today. I'm sorry. Our finance team is still working to get those for me. But we expect the same this year. We expect the allocation to be exhausted before the fiscal year ends.
Okay, thank you. So just so I heard correctly, if it's a pet brought in, there's a fee that's charged to the pet owner.
Yep.
And right now you said those on government subsidy can get them, that's taken care of. But if
yes.
it's a stray, or what you said, what was the term you used again?
Free roaming cat.
Free roaming cats, because that's been an issue just, I guess, I'm there statewide.
Yep. They
are brought in, and then the Humane Society then does the spay and neutering at no charge.
Right.
And then what happens with the
funding.
cats?
The caregivers take them back to where they were found.
What if they don't want? Because I remember in the past there were some cats that had kittens, and I just had them captured, and I didn't want to bring them back. What happens if then we don't want to have to take that responsibility?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no really other solution for a cat that's not socialized. So in the case of the kittens, you can bring those to us, and we'll put them out in foster care and get them socialized for adoption. But in terms of the unsocialized adult cats, the only real mechanism we have right now is to spay and neuter them and return them to where they were so that they're not breeding.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you again, Ms. Kendrick. I believe Ms. Young wanted to testify. If you wanted to come up and identify yourself. Anyone else wanting to testify can fill in the front row. Please proceed when you're ready.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of Roar Rescue of Animal Rights in strong support. So least restrictive parameters for funding per city law will create less of an administrative burden when initiating programs. As someone who actively traps, neuters, and releases feral cats, and as someone who helps others navigate resources, if the community can get funding for surgery in an efficient manner, that's ideally the best. I really like working with Fur Angel, Popoki Place Sanctuary, and Humane Society for these animal management concerns. And also, so I'm not like an ambassador for like Humane Society or anything, but I really like Humane Society because it provides a diverse list of services like performing trap and neuter, vet care, facility space, adoptions, low-income services to assist with management of animals. And the county funding will strengthen and build resilience in the action plan for neuter surgeries. So while Humane Society operates the program because it's a specialized skill set, the county provides the funding and contracts with the Humane Society. So what to implement as far as like parameters for animal welfare, I can get you a list of professional federal and state offices involved in management purview of animals. Sure, yeah.
Mahalo. See no questions for the testifier. Thank you again for your advocacy. With no one else in person, going online, having no one registered or online, no raised hands on the screen, we'll go ahead and close testimony and go into discussion. Was there any other questions or discussions for anyone here today? Okay, members, I'm going to make my recommendation based on today's testimony. Chair's going to recommend that Bill 41, 2024 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion, objections, or reservations on that recommendation? Hearing none, so ordered. Mahalo. And we'll go back to agenda item number 4 for action. This was Bill 40, 2024, amending Ordinance 23-29 by adding solar energy storage and energy efficiency projects for multifamily dwellings and commercial buildings to the list of eligible projects for professional self-certification. I'm introduced by Council Chair Waters and myself. I'll go ahead and call up Deputy Director Gallagher. And Chair, feel free to add a few words if you wanted to. Otherwise, we'll just turn over to perfect. Aloha, Deputy Director. How are you doing? Please proceed when you're ready. Just wanted to ask your position on the bill and any additional insight that you had.
Okay. Thank you, council members. Good afternoon. My name is Brian Gallagher, Deputy Director of the City's Department of Planning and Permitting. We're supportive of Bill 40. With any bill like this, there's always a balance between the public and private management. Some of it would tie into, I believe, we got to balance it with Ordinance 2044. And so it's like, so if as we try to improve DPP to get some of these building permits and through quicker, no matter what self-cert program it is, we still have to inspect to make sure ordinances and codes are met. So we need a basic fundamental level of submittal so we can review, so when our inspectors go out, they make sure they can verify that all the building codes, electrical codes, mechanical codes are all met. Otherwise, whoever's, residents for this bill, particularly it's commercial and multifamily. Multifamily can become tricky because say it's a townhome, how do you, say it's, solar or whatever wiring is, does it go into adjacent, units, things like that. But overall, we're supportive. We're definitely looking for ways we can improve and move this forward quicker. And we've been meeting with members of the solar industry, and they've been helping us work through the intricacies. So yeah, we think this could be good.
Well, I appreciate that insight, Deputy Director. With the members' indulgence, I'll go to testimony and then open it up for discussion and questions. Thank you, Deputy Director. If you could just hang out for a little bit as well. And then we'll go to registered in-person testimony. We have Rocky Mold. No other registered testifiers. Anyone wanting to testify after can line up in the front. And then please go ahead and proceed when you're ready.
Aloha, Chair Weyer, Chair Waters, members of the committee, and members of council. Thank you for hearing this bill. I'm testifying, I'm the executive director of the Hawaii Solar Energy Association. I'm testifying in strong support of this bill. Permitting has been a challenge for us. And as Deputy Director Gallagher mentioned, we've been really focused on Ordinance 2044 compliance, which is really smaller scale solar projects that make up a large majority of like the flow of projects. Those are projects that are 20 kW and under. This bill is reaching projects that are larger than that. And that's really been a hole for us that we needed to fill. And we think this is a really simple, easy way to get at some of these larger scale projects that are gonna make such an impact for Oahu. So thanks for the support of this. And to follow on some of the vibes coming out of Chicago, this gives me hope, and I really love seeing you guys do something about this, so thank you so much.
Appreciate that testimony. Any questions for the testifier? Could I just get you to identify yourself for the record real quick? I don't know if I caught your name.
Sorry, I'm Rocky Mold, Executive Director of the Hawaii Solar Energy Association.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Seeing no one else in chamber wanting to testify, we'll go online with no registered testifiers. Anyone wanting to testify can use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and. Oh, is there one? Oh, my apologies. Ms. Wong, are you online? Sandy Wong?
Yes, I'm online, Chair. Thank you. I have nothing more to add, so I'll stand on my written testimony. I think Mr. Mo said exactly what needed to be said, and I would just say for the record that I am in support of Bill 40. Thank you.
Appreciate that and appreciate all your work. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none. And seeing no one else online wanting to testify for this, we'll go ahead and close testimony and enter discussions. I'll just note that I think this is an opportunity for us to discuss, how we can tackle, of course, the permitting process, right, and how we can speed that up, making affordable, renewable energy more accessible to our lower income families, and of course, maintaining safety. And so appreciate Deputy Director and of course, stakeholders' willingness to continue conversation outside of committee on how we can adjust if we need to. But my intent was to move the bill forward. So was there any other discussion from the committee members? No? Okay, appreciate that. So then Chair is going to recommend that Bill 40, 2024 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. And then having completed agenda item number 5 already, we'll come to agenda item number 6. For action, Bill 46, 2024 addresses the taxation of vacant residential properties in the city and county of Honolulu. Members, we have a posted proposed CD1 to the Bill 1 that I submitted. For your information, a summary of the amendments is posted on the agenda. We also have distributed a hand-carried CD1 to the bill, OCS 2024-0777. I'll first defer to Council Chair Waters or Councilmember Cordero, the introducers, for an explanation. It could be of the general purpose, but I'll defer to Chair.
Well, actually, I'd like to point out that the median home price in Hawaii is 1.1 million plus. We have the highest rent in the country, higher than New York, higher than Los Angeles, Chicago. 67,000 people left Hawaii in 2022, according to the Housing Fact Book done by UHERO. We need to find a way to solve this housing crisis. And this is an incentive to get people to rent their vacant homes out. We call it fill and build. We can only build so many units, but if we can fill our empty units, I think we could make a huge dent in the housing crisis. So thank you.
Mahalo, Chair. Appreciate that. And I know we do have, perfect. BFS Director Andrew Kwano on behalf of the administration. Director, if you wanted to just share some initial thoughts. I know there was, I believe, multiple communications on the tax measures introduced and discussed today. But if you had any thoughts you wanted to share with the committee at this point.
Yes, thank you, Committee Chair Weyer. Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. With regard to Bill 46, 2024, we've posted written testimony. BFS has, I believe, CCSR has posted testimony, as well as our Office of Housing. From BFS's perspective, we support the intent of implementing an empty homes tax. We do have concerns because we don't believe that the bill fully recognizes the required staffing, resources, and timetable to properly implement this type of program. As a result of our concerns, we issued a request for proposal to engage a consultant to help determine best practices in formulating and guiding policies, organizational structure and staffing, systems, equipment, the operating budget, a target property listing, and assistance with standard operating procedures. We believe that the study will help us greatly in terms of implementing the bill effectively. We're in the process of working with the consultant to move things forward. Here for questions. Thank you, Committee Chair.
Mahalo, Director. Councilmember Toba.
Thank you, Chair. Budget Director, how many homes would this apply to? I have several, sorry.
We really don't know. There are studies out calling out more than 30,000 possible empty homes on this island. When you look at the parcel count, we have, in terms of residential A homes, you know, upwards of 280,000 parcels, 270 to 280,000 parcels, a lot of parcels. But, you know, in terms of how many will be determined to be empty, we're going to find out.
Well, I've heard that there are approximately 34,235 units that would qualify as an empty home. So, again, is that an accurate number or?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I know what study you're talking about. When I read the footnote, it almost looks like a point-in-time count based on.
Do you want to explain to the audience what a point-in-time count is?
As of a certain day, put it that way, versus assessing if the home is truly empty for 180 days.
Right. So you go knock on the door, nobody answers, empty. Okay. For homes that would qualify as an empty home, do you know what their assessed values are, and could you give us a range?
Not right now, because we would need, and that is why we asked in the RFP that the consultant help us to prepare a property listing, because we would need to know what parcel, you know, TMK, we need to measure to have that information for you accurate.
Okay, so practically speaking, how would this be implemented, and how would BFS designate that a home is an empty home?
We don't have a methodology yet, but we have seen what other governments do, and it looks like quite a few use an exemption-based approach. So, you know, everyone has to file a declaration. You have to file it by a certain time, and you file it with a selection of an exemption that applies to your property. And if that's so, you're exempt from the empty home tax. So that's a process that has to be thought through and implemented, and that's what we see so far. And the current bill, Council's bill, reflects that approach as well.
No, okay. I just want to make sure that, you know, we know this openly, and thank you so much for that. Thank you, Chair.
Lalo, any other questions for the director? Otherwise, we may go to testimony. Okay, Chair Waters, Vice Chair after. Okay.
Thank you, Director, for your comments. In the bill, we put down that 5% of the revenue generated from the empty home tax could be used by your department to run the program. Is that sufficient, or would you like us to modify that?
I think as we get further along in the analysis, you know, we'd be able to provide, you know, better guidance on whether it should be modified. When we look at the data of a handful of programs that are in operation, the revenue collected varies quite a bit. You know, some collect closer to $10 million, and then you have others that collect $30 to $40 million, and then, you know, I think I saw one based on a state program where the number is a lot higher, you know, approaching $100 million, but it involved a lot of area, a large geographical area, much larger than our island. So I think as we get more information, you know, as we start our project to understand the landscape, we'll be able to provide more guidance on that.
I appreciate that. And I know in your written testimony, you acknowledge that this is similar to Bill 9 from 2022, which I introduced back in 2 years ago. And I appreciate the fact that you're willing to study the how to implement it. But I note that even in your testimony, you say that the study is going to determine whether or not you even should implement a tax. But let me ask you this. you know, many believe here in Honolulu that we have a crisis, a housing crisis. Do you believe we have a housing crisis?
Yes.
Okay, great. As I pointed out in my opening remarks, the median price of a home on Oahu is now over 1.1 million. You know, just doing the math, you have to earn 183% of the area median income in order to qualify to purchase a home of that price. That amounts to about $254,000 a year that you have to earn to buy a home. And that's an awful lot of money. And, you know, I don't know too many people who make that kind of money. So, you know, that's bad. We, as I mentioned again, according to UHERO, you know, the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization, you know, we're paying the highest rent in the country, right? So if you can't buy a home, you gotta rent. But if the rent is the highest in the country, you know, your other option is, as we're hearing earlier discussions, is you're gonna go homeless, right? You either buy, rent, or some of us are lucky enough to live with family. But, you know, then according to the UHERO study, 67,000 people left, local residents left. Now, what we always hear about in the news is, well, 55,000 people came in. So it's net, you know, 12,000 or so. But really, I'm more concerned about the people who are leaving. And I talked about this before where, you know, my own siblings can't afford to live here. We were all born here. So in my mind, this is a crisis. We cannot wait. And we hope that the study that you're doing is done quickly, because the sooner we act, the sooner we could solve this problem. But to answer your question earlier, it's a State Department of Business and Economic Development 2024 Housing Demand Report. So the TBED reports that there are approximately 34,270 vacant units on Oahu. Now, I don't know how they actually determined that. But one of the things that's really interesting, I may have a question in here, is that, you know, the UHERO study that I'm talking about, it's called the Housing Fact Book 2024, which we're inviting them to come speak at the HSAC conference. So everybody who's interested should come to the HSAC conference. But, you know, they determined by zip code on every island how many units are purchased from out-of-state buyers. And they determined on Oahu about 10% of the units in the year that they studied were purchased by out-of-state buyers. 17%, that's for homes, single-family homes. 17% of the condos on Oahu were purchased by out-of-state buyers. And how they know this is they got information from Budget and Fiscal Services on where we mail the property tax bill. Yeah? Folks, if you look at what it is on the neighbor islands, it's even worse. Like Big Island and Kauai, like upwards of 50% of their units are sold to out-of-state buyers. So what I'm hoping is what this bill does, it encourages people, you know, there's the stick and the carrot. This is the stick to say, rent it out to local people or else you gotta pay a higher tax. That's the whole idea, right? And if we got 34,000, right, and perhaps Denise Iseri can answer the question is, what is the need? What do we need? I think it's upwards of 25,000. If we even fill half of these empty homes with local residents, we make a huge dent in the problem. I see you nodding, and I know you agree with me. It's just all about implementation. But I think if we truly believe it is a crisis, which you agree that it is, all hands on deck. 24/7 to solve the problem. We cannot put this off anymore. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Truly
Thank
appreciate those sentiments, Chair. We'll go to Vice Chair, and then if committee would entertain, we'll take testimony, and then we'll be back in discussion for additional questions. Vice Chair,
Thank
please
you.
proceed.
Director, you know, since you have actually provided position statements on the multitude of RPT bills that we considered yesterday and today, I actually like your position statement because you actually, if you didn't think we were serious, you wouldn't be undertaking the study. So I actually thought it was okay. So I just wanted to make a couple of comments. In the first paragraph, you say may not fully recognize the required staffing, et cetera, et cetera. I think we do. We take this very seriously. So out of all of the bills, I think if there is a movement where there is collective unity, it's going to be this one. So we do recognize it, and we will make sure you have the appropriate staffing. Second, in the second paragraph, it says a consultant has been selected, awarded, and will provide guidance on if, how, and when the city should properly pursue an empty homes tax program. I actually have concern about that sentence because a consultant should not be doing that. That's not their job. Their job is to assess the situation and determine the impacts and make recommendation. It is the administration and the city council who will be determining whether we pursue an empty homes tax program. So I just want to make sure we understand the role. A consultant will not unilaterally be telling the people of the city and county of Honolulu if and when we should pursue a empty homes tax program, because some do. And this issue is so important. Most of them don't live here. So I just want to make sure we know who's going to be determining it. It's going to be you guys and the city council. And my last question has to do with the actual cost. So, I mean, revenue generated. So from this study, you believe that you will be able to provide us with the appropriate data, perhaps, on the potential revenue that will be raised from this, correct?
Correct, because we asked the consultant to provide a property listing.
Okay.
Target property listing. So that'll help greatly.
Okay. And just, Chair, for you and for my colleagues, one of the reasons I am reluctant to determine how the funds would be set is because I would like to know. And so I know that some of the amendments being considered today actually has percentages. I would prefer that it be a blank slate and we move the bill as is so that as it moves through the process, we have all of the available data and more time for all of us to be considering that. But thank you for that. I just wanted to know because we have no data right now.
Yes, and Councilmember, I hear what you said. You know, the consultant will study and provide guidance. I agree with you. The administration and council members will make the decision.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Can we go to testimony real quick, or do you want to? Yeah, mahalo, Councilmember. We'll go to in-person testimony. Doing decently on time at 2:30. I know we have a couple more big RPT bills as well. We'll go to Ellen Carson, and then following up with Suzanne Skold and Paula Adams. Ms. Carson, please proceed. Identify yourself and proceed when you're ready.
Thank you so much. I'm Ellen Carson, in strong support of Bill 46. As you've just heard, every empty home hurts Oahu. It means some family somewhere on an island has no place to live and becomes either homeless or needs to leave the islands. There's a CD1, the most recent one, that allocates 50% of revenues to go to homelessness and affordable housing. That's a huge step in the right direction. But I would ask, in light of the crisis that we're hearing about, as you've just described, why is it not 100%? I would urge you that this is a special bill for a special purpose. Let's make 100% effort, let's make 100% revenues, and let's make it 100% effective. I also like that CD1 would leave the council with flexibility in 3 different areas of spending for affordable housing and homelessness, but it does mention that one of those areas should go up to 140% AMI. I would urge you to consider instead 80% AMI, so that we won't have the type of Kakako-style units that no one can afford that have been built to 140% AMI. Thank you for your consideration with this testimony and for your work on helping us address the housing crisis.
Thank you, Ms. Carson. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, Mahalo for your testimony. We'll go to Suzanne Skold, and then following up with Paula Adams. Aloha.
Aloha, Chair Weyer, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Suzanne Scholl testifying on behalf of Aloha United Way in strong support of this bill. As Aloha United Way, we work closely with the ALICE initiative and put out ALICE reports every 2 years. We know that 41% of the families on Oahu are not able to basically survive. They are struggling with monthly bills, the rapid increases in rent, and the complete inability for most families to afford a home is primarily what's driving the families off of Oahu onto often mainland. We are losing, I think, 65,000 families. Most of the families that are coming in do not have connections to Hawaii. We're actually losing the soul of Hawaii when we see those numbers turn over. This bill will open up the number of units that we need. The estimates between 25, 35,000 units, even 50,000 units has been thrown out there as what we need to solve our housing crisis. And again, this is over 30,000 units, 34,000 from what I've heard from the 2020 census. This is a critical, incredibly important bill. I know there's opposition. I know that there's some places where we may need to just tweak, but this is too important not to pass, and we strongly urge you to do so. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll go to Paula Adams and then Kayla Ke'ehu Alexander. Please proceed when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Paula Adams. I'm just a resident of the city, and I'm coming here to support this measure. I believe that we need more houses. Me as a tenant, we are always struggling to find a place to live, and I believe that living in the city, working for the community, all of us deserve a place where we can call it home. So I strongly support this measure. Thank you.
Mahalo. And could you state your name again for the record? I wasn't sure if I caught it.
Paula Adams.
Yeah, thank you so much. Seeing no questions from the committee, we'll go to Kayla Ke'ehu Alexander, followed by Rocky Mold, followed by Summer Yadao.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair Committee. My name is Kayla Ke'ehu Alexander. I'm a resident of Pearl City, and I'm in support of Bill 46. When you go to a paina, to a cookout, to a party or gathering, everyone gets together and then you eat. And if you were raised here, you know that you don't go up for a second plate until everyone's eaten. That's our approach to food. Why is that not our approach to housing? Where one person can own multiple homes that sit vacant while our residents are forced into inappropriate or insufficient living situations and often leave. Bill 46 aligns policy with our local values, and so I think we should support it. Thank you.
Mahalo. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll go to Rocky Mold, Summer Yadao, and then anyone else wishing to testify that's unregistered in person can approach. Please proceed, Mahalo.
Aloha, Chair Weyer. Aloha, committee members and council members. I'm Rocky Mold. I'm testifying as a resident of Kaimuki, and I actually had the honor and privilege of serving on the Oahu Real Property Tax Advisory Commission that recommended this policy in its report 2 years ago that led to Bill 9 that Chair Waters mentioned. I just want to say I'm in strong support of this, and I'm really heartened to see that this is moving forward, and it's really a proactive way to address our housing crisis. And we do have a housing and affordability crisis here that we need to take bold actions to address. So thank you very much.
Mahalo. Seeing no questions from the committee, we'll go to Ms. Yadao, and then anyone else in person wishing to testify.
Wrong one. Aloha. Aloha, my name is Summer Yadao. I'm actually the Communications Director for Kupono Kaleo Ka'aina. We're a housing advocacy organization, and we're actually looking to change the conveyance tax rate in the state level. We were not successful this year, but what we found is some good models in Aspen, Colorado, where they have a designated workforce housing stock. So their climate is similar to ours, right? They have billionaires who are buying places, which are actually second or third homes, and locals are being pushed out, or workforce is also being pushed out. So I urge the council to look into that model. We're also having a housing conference on November 20th to the 22nd. The Aspen people, Housing APCHA, is going to be there presenting, as well as others for housing cooperatives, different models, so we can really solve our housing crisis. I also wanted to mention the Maui County Comprehensive Affordable Housing Plan, which was implemented. They were taking they were collecting about 25 million for their affordable housing projects, and now they have about 50 million. So just as a way to like do some digging into how it would look implemented and things. Mahalo.
Mahalo, appreciate that. Seeing no questions, we'll go to Ms. Young.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES. So wishing to comment, so what's happening is that they're buying out apartments, right, foreigners. So I do believe you have a housing crisis, but I don't believe it is for the reasons that are stated. So I don't think it's logical to assume that if laws stop foreigners from buying a home, that then now determines locals can afford it, right? Locals are unable to own a home even if the law stops foreigners from buying an empty home. So we're a research-based grassroots movement. So I will present research, for example, from the state of Hawaii's DBEDS economist's perspective. He quoted Japanese, Korean, Chinese, and Filipino communities have higher home ownership rates, which are correlated to income and better economic well-being. In contrast, newer immigrant groups like Tongan Samoans are struggling with poverty, unemployment, overcrowding rates. And then when we look at international home ownership rates, China is at 93%, United States is at 65%. All citizens in the United States own a home. Hawaii has some of the lowest in the country at 58%. So we should be looking at down payments per government subsidies for locals to own a home so that they can actually afford to own a home. So I have ideas, but I'm limited on time, so I will stop here.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Seeing no questions from the committee, appreciate your time. We'll go to the next testifier. I believe Ms. Soon was registered online but present, so please proceed when you're ready.
Okay, mahalo. Aloha nui, everyone. Becky Soon. I submitted written testimony in strong support of Bill 46. I also submitted testimony in support of Bill 47, 48. I don't know if the chair might give me a little bit of leave. I'll try not to go on too long, but if I could sum up all of my comments in regards to that entire Kama'aina package that I think is really important for our community right now. You know, I had some prepared remarks, but I'd rather share with you a little bit of a story, if I could, with why I'm here. You know, every year around this time, Facebook reminds me that my cousin left Hawaii. We were childhood sisters. We were a little bit competitive, if I'm being honest, and we always were really interested in what it was to be Hawaiian and what it was to be here in Hawaii. She was a homesteader who grew up in Kapolei. As we became adults, she really worked hard at a number of jobs and a number of different companies. You know, our ohana were Waihe'e Maui, kalo farmers. And she really saw that there was no way she was going to be able to survive here in Hawaii. And 3 days after we did this major aloha to her, she left Hawaii and Larry Ellison bought Lanai Island. And it was just a reminder to me about what the private market has to offer, just to be really honest. And while there's many, many things that the private market does well, what it doesn't do well is take care of our people. What you all do really well, and I know so many of you hold in your heart, how do we take care of our people here in Hawaii? So I think that Bill 46 is a tremendous measure and an ability to move our community forward, to make sure that people can actually afford to continue to live here in Hawaii so that my cousin, a Kapolei homesteader, can continue to live here in Hawaii. To me, that's paramount. And that's why I'm here today. And I just want to mahalo you all for having the courage to take what I think is a really difficult step forward, that I know a lot of people have concerns and questions about how do we implement it, what do we do? We just do them, bruh. We just do them. We're gonna do it. We're gonna figure it out. And honestly, there are lots of other jurisdictions that have figured out the means in which we're gonna make it happen. And I believe and I know that here in Hawaii, we're gonna make it happen here as well. Because at the end of the day, our people and our communities need to be able to have a place to call home. So I just want to mahalo this council. I want to also mahalo Chair Waters. I want to mahalo Councilmember Cordero. I want to mahalo Chair Weyer and Vice Chair Kea'aina for listening to this measure, for trying to figure out the nuts and bolts, because as I watch and I look through the details of the CD1 and the CD2, of which my written testimony does have some recommendations, but at the end of the day, I can see that every single thing that you folks are doing is taking very close attention to the needs of our community and making sure that what comes out at the end of this is going to take care of our people. So I just want to mahalo you all and want to encourage that this bill continues to move forward. I hope that it's the most progressive bill possible for our community because our families need it. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Appreciate that. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none, we'll go on to anyone else in person wishing to testify. You may just state your name and proceed.
Hello, my name is Jody Kelana. I'm Hawaiian all the way. My dad is pure Hawaiian. But I just wanted to say, you know, as Hawaiians, we care about empty homes. You know, we're trying to fight hard to get our, I was on the Hawaiian homes lease for over 20 years. I still never get one. And then get all these empty homes. I mean, you know, but the bottom line is this, yeah? Empty homes, if you guys can just take into consideration that us Hawaiians, we don't make that kind of money like out of people, like Angela was saying. You know what I mean? If the economy come down, I think all this gun violence is going to stop too. You know, but yeah. I'm not a talker, but Angela made me come up, so thank you.
Mahalo, thank you for that. See no questions from the committee. Anyone else wishing to testify in person can come up. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go to online. We'll start with Kelly Lee, followed by Levi Brooker. Kelly, if you can proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and Housing Committee members. I'm Kelly Lee, the president of OSTRA, and we are supportive of an empty home tax, but believe that homes subject to this tax should truly be empty. Other cities with empty home tax laws consider anything rented over 30 days as occupied. The hand-carried CD1 submitted by Chair Weyer addresses our concerns. Monthly rentals serve our residents needing temporary housing, including residents trying to make a go of returning to the islands. These residents also house traveling nurses, military students, and those newly housed that do not have the credit or job security needed to qualify for a longer-term lease. We show 9,500 temporary furnished homes, and much has changed since Ordinance 22.7. We hope to educate the public and lawmakers on why moving the minimum stay back to 90 days would eliminate an entire housing segment. Until then, 30 days are legal and should not be considered empty in this bill. Please support Chair Weyer's hand-carried CD1 that corrects this oversight. Mahalo.
Thank you. Seeing no questions of the testifier, we'll go to Levi Brooker.
Thank you. This is Levi Brooker. I'm a longtime homeowner in Ko'olina. My wife went to high school and college in Honolulu, but had to move to the mainland about 15 years ago because she couldn't afford to live there anymore. We've worked our entire lives to earn enough money to purchase our home in Ko'olina with the plan to eventually retire there, making it our permanent residence. We bought in Ko'olina specifically because the HOA allows owners to rent their homes out on a 30-day basis, which allows us to partially subsidize our payments. Note that we actually lose money every year while we pay almost 18% revenue taxes to the state and county, in addition to paying local property managers, cleaners, vendors, etc. My point is there's a perception that everyone who has a rental property on Oahu is rich and making money hand over fist, but that's not the case for us. Furthermore, there are over 20 listings for long-term rental available in Ko Olina and 50 homes and apartments available for lease in Kapolei today per Zillow, so there's not necessarily a shortage of rental supply in this area. Like it or not, Oahu absolutely does have a need for at least some short-term housing, and when 30-day rentals eventually get banned everywhere but in resort communities, there will be a shortage. Based on this, I respectfully ask that homes in Ko Olina that are being legally rented on a 30-day basis be exempt from any potential empty homes tax. I work in the affordable housing industry as well and can tell you the only way to make a dent in the housing crisis is to incentivize and allow developers to build new affordable housing. The handful of homeowners in Ko Olina who are legally renting out homes on a 30-day basis are not the issue, so please do not impose any additional penalties on us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brooker. Seeing no questions, we'll go to Susan Lee.
Hello.
Aloha, please proceed when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Susan Lee. I'm the housing policy analyst for Hawaii Appleseed, and I'm providing testimony on our organization's behalf. I wanted the opportunity to express our strong support for Bill 46. Like many people have mentioned, it is impossibly affordable to own a home here in Hawaii. And I just wanted to highlight that with the UHERO Fact Book, you can see that since 2000, home prices in Honolulu have increased by 400%. And due to Oahu's low property tax rates, investors can easily capitalize on this without the need for any additional rental income. And because of that, we've seen a number of 34,000 vacant units according to the Census Bureau. And then I also wanted to highlight for the other people that have mentioned, local residents are having a hard time affording homes here, and that's largely due to these investments. If you look at the numbers, and according to the housing planning study, homes that were bought by out-of-state investors were nearly 50% more than what residents were paying for homes. This is increasing the benchmark for what our market rate housing is and making it difficult for our residents to afford. Again, just wanted to support this bill. Taxing empty homes could provide revenue for other housing initiatives, including like what other people have mentioned, home down payment assistance, and vouchers, and all of the housing initiatives that we'll need.
Mahalo. Seeing no questions, we'll move on to Jim Tree.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I moved to Hawaii in 1972. I'm proud for my university education in Hawaii and my many friends from Kamehameha and Punahou. I'm thankful that you are tackling the Hawaii housing crisis at this time. I currently live between Washington State and Hawaii. I have a home on Oahu. I've been deeply committed to following some of these issues, including the empty homes tax. I agree that, and I applaud you for tackling this problem, this housing crisis, and trying to help with the affordable housing and with the homelessness problem. I've worked many years in the government as an attorney for the government in local municipalities and the federal government. And one thing I've seen over and over again is that when the government gets a hold of a great program that's got a great purpose, they sometimes overreach and the program suffers. That's what I fear is going to happen following the Vancouver, British Columbia model. It's not a model that's likely to be successful in the United States. The 3% empty homes tax is too excessive. It'll result in people fighting it in the courts and in finding creative ways to avoid it. A better way to do it is to reduce the tax, create a residential B category. Instead of charging two-tiered system of 0.4 and 1.1, just charge a straight 1.1. That will cap the empty homes tax at $7,100. All the cities in the United States that have the empty homes tax, except for one, have capped it. San Francisco is capped at 5,000, Oakland at 6,000, Berkeley at 3,000. By you capping it at 7,100, you'll keep your welcome sign out, but you'll be able to collect over $100 million. Here's how. 34,000 empty homes. The chair of the city council said that he hoped to get 50% of those back into the housing market. That's a great goal. I applaud it. If that happens, there'll be 50% that'll be left out. With an average house value of 1.1 million and 7,100, that's over $120 million in additional property taxes you'll receive by making a residential B empty homes tax category, where they instead of paying 0.4% on the first million, you pay 1.1%. It'll be a reasonable tax. People won't fight it. You'll keep the welcome mat open. You'll collect over $100 million for affordable housing. You'll put a lot of houses back into affordable housing. And I think it's a much better and effective way that you won't have all the headaches with the lawsuits and people fighting it and the 280,000 applications a year that will take 25 people at 10 minutes apiece to review. Thank you.
Mahalo. Thank you for your testimony. See no questions in the committee. We'll go to Stu Simmons.
Aloha, and thank you, Chair and City Council, for the opportunity to speak. I am a housing advocate. I've worked with many organizations, including the Appleseed, Keep It Kailua, Save Oahu's Neighborhood, and the Kailua Neighborhood Board on housing issues. I'm in very strong support of Bill 46 CD1. I think it's critical for us to take this measure forward. I would like to see an amendment made in regards to exemptions. The chair has proposed exemptions for B&Bs and short-term rentals. I believe it should be licensed, B&Bs and short-term rentals, so there's no ambiguity to what would qualify. Also, I want to make the point that the necessity of at least a 90-day rental is critical. What we see happening in the marketplace with the so-called 30-day rentals is people are occupying them for 2 weeks, but are signing what we would consider a bogus contract or lease for 30 days. And so these are vacationers or transient, sustained for a short term. And the purpose, I believe, this bill is to promote permanent residency, and so to allow only a 30-day rental would not allow or promote permanent residency. So I ask that the bill continue to require a minimum of 30-day rentals. Thank you.
Thank you, Seeing no questions from the committee, we'll go to Natalie Iwasa.
Thank you, Chair. Natalie Iwasa. For the record, I am very much opposed to this bill. The big problem I see with this potential policy is how vacant homes would be determined and the evidence needed to show that they're not vacant. And it's questionable whether this tax would really result in meaningful increases to our housing stock for residents. Now, I understand there's a lot of pressure to pass this, and I'd like to share some additional concerns. First of all, the bill requires a lot of administrative work, probably at least 250,000 documents coming in annually to show that certain homes are not vacant. And what happens when a homeowner doesn't submit the documentation on time after the first year when that first waiver is allowed? Can you imagine the shock a homeowner is going to get when they get a $15,000 or a $30,000 tax bill on top of their real property taxes? Another concern I have is the mailing period that you have. You allow 5 days, whereas some people are on the mainland. It takes more than that. And I know there are people who don't support mainland owners, but let me tell you, there are a lot of landlords who provide housing for people like me on the mainland. A vacant homes tax is likely to be prorated when a home is sold. So you're putting out another block for people who actually want to buy a home. And we get to the point where we have our closing costs set or a down payment set, and all of a sudden there's this big tax in there that we have to cover. I don't think that's a good idea. Certain exemptions allowed in here are only for once every 5 years. Why are you penalizing people who have to sell their home within a 5-year period, or people who care for their mother 1 year and their father another year? This is bad policy. The evidence goes overboard. You're asking for a lot of different types of documents, potentially HIPAA violations in there, and the tax rate of 3% is simply outrageous. This bill is not good fiscal policy, not good public policy, and should not be passed. I ask that you instead go after the low-hanging fruit, remove exemptions from credit unions, labor unions, business leagues, and other nonprofits that are not charitable and cost us millions of dollars every single year. So thank you for allowing me to go over a little bit in my testimony, Chair.
Yeah, of course. Mahalo, Ms. Iwasa. Seeing no questions from the committee, we'll go to Virginia Dutton. And then Ben Sadowski will be up after that.
Chair and committee, thank you for allowing me to speak this afternoon. I'm opposed to this bill. I think it's essential that you all recognize the difference between good intentions and sound policy. And this latest homes tax proposed by the City Council just seems like bad policy. Taxing vacant properties that sit unused for most of the year at a higher rate seems like an easy source of revenue. But how will this be accomplished? Will each property and each family have to prove that they live in their own home each year? How? And how much of a burden is that going to be on our already overworked city offices? I guess I sometimes feel like maybe the intention of Bill 4624 is to intentionally penalize local folks like my husband and myself, who have residential properties, some of which we rent for some of which we rent for 30 days at a time, to people who come for medical, to bury their dead up at Punch Bowl, you name it. And then the other question I have is, how are you going to police the very wealthy people who hire attorneys and management companies and write fake leases so that their properties aren't vacant, even if they aren't actually lived in? The other thing that I would like to offer is a way to gain housing and jobs on Oahu is to make it easier to build ADUs and homes. Right now, my husband and I could build 3 ADUs on a property we own, but just the permitting process is enough to discourage us. It's like, I think that's another thing that you could truly look at to expand the housing shortage on Oahu. So that's all I can say is I really would like you to oppose this bill and look at ways for expanding housing without taxing people to death and without making another bureaucratic, burdensome entity to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Seeing no comments from the committee, we'll go to phone number beginning with 808, ending in 98. Oh, my apologies. Ben first. Proceed when you're ready.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you, Chair Weyer, Vice Chair Kiaina, and council members. My name is Ben Sadowski. I'm with Unite Here Local 5. We represent about 10,000 working people in the hotel, food service, and healthcare industries across Hawaii, and we are in full support of Bill 46. We took a recent survey of our members, and we found that 57% responded that they spend more than half their income on housing, and another 30% spend between a quarter and a half. 69% of the people that responded claimed that they or their children had thought of leaving the state. And I think that's a very common thing that we all see. And we believe these numbers reflect the struggles that are facing families across Oahu. So, the members of our union that are in major hotels, they know that the situation needs to change. And they're in the midst of struggling to make that change, to get a new contract with better wages that will allow them and their families to stay here in Hawaii and make our communities stronger. And they're even willing to go on strike if they have to. But there's only so much that we can do as far as our employers. And if the cost of housing keeps going up, then everything they achieve could be lost. So we really appreciate the introduction of this measure and the movement forward. We think now is the time to turn things around, and Bill 46 is one opportunity to do so. It's obviously going to take a multifaceted effort, you know, and we're going to have to be very creative and look at all the different ways we can bring down the costs and bring up the supply and all of that stuff. But I think that this is one key part that you know, could certainly make a difference and discourage anyway speculation in the residential property market, and encourage residential property owners to live in or rent out or sell their units to full-time residents. So thank you very much.
Mahalo for your testimony. See no questions from the committee. We'll go to phone number 808, last three digits 989.
Aloha, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, this is Tara Rojas, and I would like to lend my voice to support Bill 46. And as I was listening to one of the last testifiers, you know, I came to the conclusion that in addition to water, land, and EV being important issues, and in not necessarily in that order, but all on the same level, housing as well. And listening to the variety of, you know, testifiers, it was confirmed that listening to their voices for Kanaka Maoli, the heart, soul, and essence, as one testifier said, of Hawaii, for the families that I hear, so to avoid any more Kanaka Maoli and Kamaina local families leaving, that their voices need to be heard. And if they are saying, you know, just do it and go forward, that they need housing, period, that should take priority over anyone, no matter, regardless of the time amount spent here, you know, or you know, just here for a long time, that we are settler allies, and that there are other ways to go about, you know, earning income other than through housing, because that's where the technicalities always come up and seem to stop any effort to prioritize housing for Kanaka and Kama'aina. So again, avoid any stalling or any urgency, because when you start to nitpick, and then with everything that, you know, technically is proposed, there's always staffing and funding, but somehow it still goes forward. So please listen to the voices. I support this. You know, you should as well. And then, you know, one of the issues that I also heard was to incentivize developers for affordable housing. And on that, I would like to add or end with and reiterate that even $400,000 is not affordable. So regardless of like the calculations, just straight numbers, even $300,000 would be technically quote unquote affordable. 200 to 300,000, even in this day and age, in this year of 2024. So to keep that in mind, that anything above that is not affordable, as developers put aside their allotment, you know, for affordable housing. But yes, so we need to go forward with any issue, with any bill that will support homelessness and lack of housing. Mahalo.
Thank you for your testimony. See no questions from the committee. I'll just note, we also had on our registered online Stephanie Brooker, Lisa Lai, Wardell Townsend, and Stephanie Sakamoto and Sherry Cumming. Were any of them online, Madam Clerk?
Chair, none of them are online.
Okay, mahalo. And then I'll just ask anyone else online wishing to testify can use the raise hand feature. Ms. Achu, if you want to go ahead and proceed.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Aloha, everyone, committee. I hadn't planned on testifying on this, but I just want to throw a couple of thoughts out really quickly. It is definitely time to start taking care of us, and this helps get us there. It's a step. So the one thing I would consider is, although these homes are vacant, they were probably bought at a high price and probably carry high mortgages. If they don't have a mortgage, then it's wide open space. So we would have to consider at some point a rent control aspect so that those houses can be made available at affordable rents, because the rents right now, it's free reign. They can set it to whatever they want. If you have a high mortgage, you're gonna want that amount of money, and many people can't afford that. Very few people have multiple homes sitting there vacant with no purpose. So it is either being rented out for whatever reason and they're making something off of it, or they truly can afford for it to sit. So there is room here to help support our local Hawaii tax-paying residents and being able to help support us for a change and get us forward. Because if they're not Hawaii tax-paying residents and their homes are vacant, they're benefiting off of being able to afford all of that, and we cannot. So that's a really weird offset. So just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Appreciate the insight in your testimony. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none and having no one else online wanting to testify, we'll go ahead and close testimony on this matter. We'll start discussion. I'm going to reference before we open it up for everyone. OCS 2024-0777/8/20/2024 1:37 p.m. is the CD1 draft that I anticipate requesting a vote on. I'll note in reference again when we have discussion later that that motion is going to also request amendments orally as discussed in two places. On page 4 of the actual ordinance, section 8-blank.3 tax revenues, subsection 2 of that, again, this is relating to tax revenues, I'm striking the word rental prior to housing. And then on page 7 of the ordinance, subsection 15 of the exemptions, changing the 6 months to read 180 days. And that was after discussion with stakeholders. And first wanted to just go over again the filed CD and just highlight the overarching amendments that we made that I think were relatively minor in comparison to the overarching purpose of the bill. Generally, we put a lot of thought and intention into the exemption modifications in the wording. Particularly, I know the high-level ones that I think produced the most discussion was streamlining the minimum requirement for each combined lease period of time. So instead of making it a 90-day minimum added together, which really would have limited it to 2, just have a streamlined, essentially whatever use is being done on the property, as long as it was 6 months at least or more of the year, that would satisfy the purpose of the bill. And that was done just in light of the recent legal questions that are ongoing, right, relating to short-term rentals, midterm rentals, and the city's future-looking regulations of such rentals, in terms of creating just a clean baseline methodology for the department to apply to assessing whether a property is compliant or not. Essentially, the question under these amendments is just, are they conducting an allowed use on the property? And then does that extend for at least 6 months or not? Of course, outside of the specific empty homes tax legislation, we're going through a conversation of what time period should be allowed in certain periods. And as many of you know, there are folks operating non-conforming uses, both for the short-term period, the midterm period, and other types of uses. And so that was the reasoning behind that amendment, was just to provide consistency and clarity. I did remove ADUs and all HANA units as well from qualifying as vacant properties because they're unique in terms of their use, right? So if you, say, purchase multiple condominiums, that's very different than, say, putting ADU on your single-family property that you own and maybe live on, right? And so dispossessing yourself of an extra condominium, right? Like, say you have 2 or 3 condominiums, you want to sell it. That's easier said than done are easier done than dealing with an ADU on your property that maybe you built for your aging parents. Of course, maybe they passed and maybe you're also aging, and having someone have to go through deciding like, oh, do I tear this down to comply? Do I come up with the money, or do I sell the actual home that I live in to comply with it? It's just a question I thought we didn't need to come to in terms of, you know, the underlying purpose. I do think, as we've discussed, you know, this bill provides a great opportunity to push many of the 34,000 units that are vacant into the housing market and also shift the direction of the market, right? I think there's been a lot of conversation about what qualifies as luxury versus affordable, and I think that's an important conversation to have, and a conversation that we had today, just about what AMI would really be needed to afford an actual unit here. And so I did make attempts to carve out allocations based on what I thought was reasonable, given what some advocates were asking for, given our budget constraints, understanding that in addition to the Affordable Housing Fund, we have general fund activities that we're already doing in a lot of ways. And I think looking at how we allocate any revenues from this, there's room to recognize and pull out from our budget activities that are specifically going to housing development and rentals and whatnot. And so that was just kind of the reasoning behind some of the amendments that we made. Wanted to open it up for discussion.
Chair?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So I have a question relating to your amendment for the 180 days, and that correlates to 6 months, right? And
it does.
So would you be making the same amendment for the rest, throughout the rest of the bill? Or do you have different meanings with 180 days versus the 6 months?
I think it was to provide clarity because generally, right, the city's implemented various frameworks for when you can rent either short-term or mid-term, right? And so we have 30-day rentals, we have 90-day or below rentals based on the outcome from the injunction. And of course, the state law that changed, and so I know DPP is going through the process of adjusting the admin rules. I think the purpose in changing the number was just to provide for a better discussion of what the rentals really mean, in that if you're doing STR, for example, you still want to be doing it for 6 months out of the year. And I think some stakeholders had brought up the question of there might be ambiguity about what that means, because STRs by nature, if they fall into that lower category, are able to do a weekend rental or 2-week rental, right? Versus someone that's doing a monthly lease of a property for primary residence, which would be a lot less ambiguous. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, I think just if you're looking for clarifying, I guess, the ability to name amount of months or days, would we be making it consistent throughout the bill?
That wasn't my intent. And I'm also open to the idea of leaving it at 6 months if you think that leaves it less.
No, I was just wondering about the different meanings for both 180 and 6 months, because they both essentially equate more or less. I know that there's different months, days in different months, so I understand that. My next question is, with the intent for the fill and build, or even build and then fill, but no, actually no, fill and build, purpose and incentive of this bill, for the dedication of funding for the revenue, do you think that if this tax were to then decline, that means this bill is doing its purpose to ensure that there's less empty homes, which means the city will then collect less, right?
What was the first part of the question?
Okay, with the dedication of funding, we would see a decline in revenue, and then I guess also a decline in the collection of the tax itself, because that means that the incentives for fill and build is working to ensure that there aren't as many empty homes.
So you're asking if we'd see a decline in revenue as folks.
Okay, let's just go and ask the, okay, do you think that if this, and hopefully this bill works to fill and build, but fill properties and units up, that the collection of empty homes tax will be less because this bill is being successful in incentivizing filling those units?
I think yeah, that would be the goal, would be to decrease the existence of empty homes and arrive at a zero sum.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with the dedication of funding, which I know you mentioned about how our budget may not reflect, I guess the need of housing and homelessness that you mentioned. But with this, if we do see a decline in collection, what would happen then for the dedicated funding? Because then it would still kind of lock up some parts of our budget as well. So I was just wondering your thoughts.
Yeah, so if this arrives at a zero sum, then the mandated allocation of this funding source would become a zero sum as well. So there would be no additional burden on our operating budget. Understanding that this is all surplus funding, it's a supplemental property tax, so it's only going to increase the revenue that the city generates. And we went through this conversation, and so I'm open to discussions, but you're asking questions, and so I just want to be transparent. And so I think a part of the conversation we've been having was many in the community want to allocate it entirely to the Affordable Housing Fund. We had a very vigorous conversation just about the scope of what affordable housing looks like, right? We know that we need certain types of subsidies and support for units from, like, say, the 30 to 60% AMI. We know HUD programming and other types of funding sources identify the 60 to 80. There's some controversy, right, on that 80 or maybe more once you get up to 120 to 140. And just in recognizing where the city could be focusing its housing work, I think the allocation that is put in is at all levels, understanding that obviously, lower income projects are going to need greater subsidy to make them pencil out. And sometimes that's offset by higher market units, but also at the same time, when we're approaching 140% AMI, it's really reflective of the out-migration that we're seeing, right? When you have dual income households leaving the state, 2 teachers, 2 firefighters, right? Those are somewhat above what we've traditionally seen as low-income families, right? Definitely above what we would consider low income if we're looking at the AMI set by HUD, which I think is why Vice Chair was very pertinently mentioned the other day that we need to have a conversation about that. And so, understanding your question, I think there's room for disagreement on the allocation, but just wanted to kind of give you the background and explanation for how we arrived at this breakdown. I felt like it was reasonable, and I know I mentioned in committee before that, when there's opportunity to compromise, why wouldn't we? And so for me, it was, okay, we're preserving 50% of the funds unrestricted to go into general funds, knowing that affordable housing requires infrastructure and fire and HPD and all these matters, taking the other 50% and breaking it in part amongst an allocated special fund that we have, the Affordable Housing Fund, and then breaking the rest across broad types of services that could be used to support housing at all levels, from homelessness all the way up.
Okay, and for the dedication of funds, you mentioned 50-50, so 20% actually goes to a special fund, you said?
That was the Affordable Housing Fund. I would be comfortable leaving some of the budgetary conversations to Budget Committee.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the actual amendment, that's why.
Yeah, so the actual amendment, yeah. And I only raise that because I'm not sure if there's going to be feedback from Corporation Council or not.
Oh, yeah. Okay, no, I'm just trying to get clarification because for me, the only thing that's really dedicated is 20%, right? But the rest of the 30% is just able to be shown by the city that, hey, this is how much we collected, this is how much funding, which can equate to 20% of the city's supply of affordable rental housing, and then at least 10% was used to address homelessness. So it could have really come up from any pocket, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, and again, that's conversation we had with advocates. I understand the desirability of putting it into, say, the Affordable Housing Fund because it's locked in, right? And so it's preserved in that pot that's continually added to and not lost. Whereas, of course, if you're provisoing funds into the operating budget that don't get spent and then they lapse, you start from ground zero the next year. And so it is harder to guarantee a commitment to housing. But I do think our general fund does quite a bit to support housing opportunities. And so was okay with it going into that, understanding that there'd be a recognition that these funds should be utilized for housing and homeless purposes.
Okay, thank you. I just, I know that you were bringing up the motion or bringing up the CD1, so that's why I wanted just clarification on the CD1
of course.
itself.
That's a great conversation. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all of your work in working with the stakeholders so we get an idea of what they want. For me, I would prefer that we, if we were to move any measure today, it would be the underlying measure unamended. I do care for the authors of the bill about the potential impact on local families who may have two homes. The intent was to deter outside investors from having empty homes, and I just want to make sure that in the long term that's taken into account, as well as the mana'o that was raised today with regard to legal short-term rentals. So apart from the multitude of amendments that you have drafted, including the where the source of funding should go, which I have grave concerns over at this point in time, you put it all together. So as a result of that, I just feel that it's you're moving too fast without adequate time for all of us to digest what you're proposing. And as a result, I feel that all your hard work is not for naught, because then when we have a hearing again, then we would have better ideas to throw something out at you to either have substitute language or modify it. My worry, if you modify this measure now, it completely changes the bill. And so I would rather have it intact. And so if you are going to be having the CD1, I will be voting no against the CD1. I will reiterate what I said yesterday at the budget, was it the budget hearing, that my preference is to have a real property tax permitted interaction group. I don't see why we're having a two-prong approach of moving some measures and not looking at the totality. The reason it's so important is you are offering where these funds should go. Well, if we want to provide relief to residential A owners to incentivize them to rent to long-term renters, then that's a good avenue where these funds should go. And so to be moving these bills in isolation and determining where the funds should be allocated, I think is not sound policy. And so again, to everybody, I just want to reiterate that my preference is that even if we move some measures, that we don't think of enacting them to law. We need to do them in tandem with the real property tax group, permitted interaction group. So that's my mana'o, but I will vote on the underlying measure.
No, I appreciate that. Of course, the committee is entitled to motion. I won't be making a motion on the underlying measure. I understand your concerns about the allocation. I agree that work could be done to break out amendments if there's certain ones you're uncomfortable with. Certain aspects of the underlying I had to adjust to feel comfortable supporting. And so, I did anticipate making a motion on the amended one, but I'm happy to postpone if the committee wants. I'll just note though for budget Vice Chair's consideration is that, or for the committee's consideration, because you've indicated your position, which I respect fully, is that, this will be heard again after going through second reading and going to budget and time to consider particular adjustments. So for folks maybe that don't consider maybe the potential disagreement as necessarily detrimental, totally respect folks that think, that they completely nullify the purpose of the bill. But again, for me, I think I went through, and not all the changes were made were ones that were all necessary for my support. But I think in looking at the adjustments that were made to exemptions, from the medical exemption to, again, the timeline to every aspect, I think it was trying to make sure that we contemplated that on one side, we need to formulate a bill that prevents people from coming in and taking advantage, but at the same time, as the policymakers, we have to, at times, evaluate the entirety of what's going on around us and ensure and understand that any measure we pass is going to have actual impacts on the community, on the market, on local families. And sometimes I feel like when we make these decisions, we don't always contemplate the individual folks affected. So that was just what I'm throwing out there for discussion. Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. If it's okay, I actually had some questions for BFS from earlier. Would that be okay at this time?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, Director Quano. And I'll just note, this is really helpful conversation. We do have a few more tax items as well, but I know everybody knows that. So we'll get through the agenda today.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director Quano. And my questions really are based on part of the discussion, but also things that I've been reading in the testimonies and some of the online testifiers. I was curious in knowing how right now we differentiate when it's an outside investor acquiring a home versus those who have been maybe inherited a home or maybe have bought a home and then they're renting it. How do we differentiate that?
Councilmember, are you asking the question in context of implementing this bill?
Yes,
specific to 46?
Specifically for this. And I think some of the other measures that are here, because I want to know what this equates to. Like what dollar amount does this equate to? How we differentiate like this when we're looking at the incentive is, I think the spirit of the bill is good because we're trying to make sure that we're taking care of our people who are here instead of encouraging or allowing those to come in from the outside. So do you know how, maybe you don't know, but maybe you could tell me who I could find that out. How do we differentiate when it's somebody from the outside, and how do we know what kind of dollar amount this equates to when we're looking at outside investors versus the locals?
So we do have information on the title holder for the homes. So, address comes into play. And depending, if you're talking about the operation of the bill as proposed, the exemption process, right? Every year, every taxpayer is going to have to submit a declaration, right? And select an exemption to avoid having to pay this tax, this surcharge. So they're going to be turning in documentation, and I think the documentation will help to identify who is local versus who's from the mainland. It's not going to be 100%, but it's going to help to do that.
But currently, there's no way to identify. Currently, right now, without this, we don't have.
You can look at the address on the bill.
And that's all, but we don't have an amount. But right now, they're just paying, and we don't have any. Like you can say it, but we'd have to actually calculate. I'm just wondering what this would equate to. We talk about the numbers.
So I'm sorry, Councilmember Okimoto. So you want to know how many title holders of these of residential parcels live here locally versus on the mainland? Is that and the value for both?
Yes.
Okay.
And how you identify it? I mean, using addresses.
We probably could break it out by address, but I'd have to check with our real property assessment team on that if you want that information.
Yes.
Related to the bill.
That might be helpful. I think because when I'm reading the testimonies, I think there's a lot of local landlords who are saying that they offer housing for locals, and there were some testifiers who talked about the importance of how they appreciate that there, and that's not vacant. But I just wanted to understand what this bill would, how that, or the future bills would impact, or the subsequent bills would impact this type of market for our housing.
So you're concerned about the local homeowner, title holder that may have more than one home?
More than one home, and then
earns a living off of renting.
Correct.
To other parties.
Correct. And I was curious to know if we're talking about the outside investors. That definitely, of course, is a a sore spot for many of us. But I was curious to know actually what does that dollar amount equate to? What would we be looking at if a measure like this went through? Do they make up most of it, or is it really the inherited or the second homes?
I think if the measure goes through, both local and non-residential homeowners will be impacted the same way. Either they're going to have an exemption, not pay the tax, or they're going to pay the tax. So it's going to impact both locals and non-locals.
And maybe this isn't a question for you, but could there be a way to separate that, where it would impact only outside investors versus?
Well, then we got to be careful, because then we enter into whether what we're doing is constitutional or not, right? So you just have to be careful if you do that.
Thank you so much, Director.
I think, yeah, both locals and people on the mainland that own property are going to be impacted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think I do have concerns with just what this would do for our locals, because that is concerning. And I like I said yesterday, I feel for Director Kawano, because I know when we play with things, it can impact your budget. But I also know that the introducers of this bill were trying to see what else can we do to generate income, which is necessary for us to provide the services that the county and the city and county have to provide. So thank you so much, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question, because I think the hardest one for me was trying to figure out how to work around, like, I guess these generational legacy properties, right? Like folks, maybe a family inherits a property and then it's a place of respite. And then it's like, of course, people acknowledge that, hey, we're in a housing crisis. We need to, it's all hands on deck, right? And so we did extend it to give folks 5 years, including, from the date this is passed. So even if you inherited it a long time ago, like to the extent you have that 5 years, gives a little bit more flexibility. We contemplated whether we exempted it entirely, but then part of the conversation from there was like, hey, maybe that means if someone has a vacant home and they pass and leave it to someone and it stays vacant, then it's like, then they get the exemption, and so trying to find a way, I think that's a great question. I think I'm definitely open to continued input on impacts like that. I think one of the things that made me more comfortable was just that it doesn't require that the property actually be leased. Just means it needs to be someone's primary residence. So for example, like the constituents I have that have a condo in town, and maybe they use it to go to doctor's appointments, and then like, their grandkids use it to go to school. Like if their grandkids living there primarily 6 months out of the year, it's not vacant, right? Even if they're not having a written lease, right? And so it is trying to hone in, and I appreciate really it was Chair Waters and Floor Leader Cordero that created the initial, that put it forward. And so really appreciate the conversation. I know, Chair, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think it's important. Thank you. I think it's important to look at this as a package, right? We're looking at Bill 46, 47, and 48 all together. So really the intent of Bill 46 is to fill these vacant units with local families. And I wanted to de-incentivize outside investors from buying up these properties and then just simply leaving them vacant for a few years and then selling them and make a couple $100,000, which is what we're seeing. Now, in order to take care of local families, you note that in the bill on page 4, in Bill 46, 4, 5, and 6, there's exemptions. So if it's your principal residence, you don't get taxed at the higher amount. If the dwelling unit is the principal residence of a renter, it won't apply. If the property is currently in probate court, this won't apply to you. If your spouse dies and wasn't on the homeowner, had the homeowner's exemption, which we've been dealing with every year, this takes care of that too. This won't apply. If you have underlying medical problems, right, which means you're out in a care home, right? But that's your home. Even though you're not there, but you're in a care home, this tax wouldn't apply to you. Or if you're a caregiver who requires you to take care of your parents in their home, but you're not living in your own home. It's still your principal place of business. This tax won't apply. So if you're deployed in the military, right, and you're not in your home, this tax won't apply. So we tried to go through and find and try to take care of all of those exemptions. And Councilmember Weyer, when you talked about these legacy properties, well, that's what Bill 47 that you and I introduced actually takes care of. That if you can prove that this property has been in your family for over 80 years, that you get a break on taxes. And then Bill 48 is if you dedicate your property to a long-term rental, you get the same benefits as if you live there. So, but these Bill 48, these long-term rental properties typically are residential, in the residential A category. And my understanding, and I think we're going to talk about this when we come to Bill 48, but we're going to lose revenue if we pass Bill 48. But you got to make up the revenue somehow, and that's where Bill 46 comes in. So if you look at these as a package, I think it's important. I think that's what possibly Councilmember Cordero and Councilmember Kia-Aina were concerned about when you allocate a certain percentage in a certain area. Because if we do pass Bill 47 and 48 and the bills that we talked about yesterday in budget, that we got to make up that revenue somehow. And that, in my mind, would be Bill 46. But in any event, I'm hoping we pass Bill 46 in some form or another today. And we have time at the next month in the next round of committee hearings to further amend them and have further discussion. So thank you. Thank you for a great discussion today.
No, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to bring up the Housing Director real quick, and then we'll go to Floor Leader, and then I think Councilmember Toba. Yeah. Mahalo for being here. I just wanted to welcome your insight as well.
Thank you very much, Housing Committee Chair Weyer, members of the committee, Denise Useri Matsubara, Office of Housing. So I just want to acknowledge all the hard work that this council has done to do and create a Kama'aina bill package, because this is a lot of work. Thank you very much. We do officially defer to BFS for comments on implementation, but I just want to say thank you for the clarity in reminding us that we have to look at this as a collective result and take a collective approach on it. You know, in addition to just that we're in a housing crisis, we need a portfolio of solutions. So this has a good potential to offer one, but net out-migration is another one, right? Oahu has lost more people than it has gained every year, about 4,500 a year, according to our housing consultant Community Scale, since 2015. And this net out-migration is particularly composed of our middle-income households earning 60 to 140% AMI. That's $67,000 to $156,000 for a couple, and $83,000 to $194,000 for a family of four are leaving town. That's our economic engine. So having said that, one of the primary reasons is our high cost of homes, as you said, and the lack of homes that are affordable. So much of our programs that exist today are geared toward multi-family rental housing. The state and the city dedicate nearly $500 million to fund low-income rentals through the LIHTC program, the Private Activity Bond Program, the Rental Housing Revolving Fund Program, and the Affordable Housing Fund. We have very few programs that support home ownership, and with the projected demand preliminarily coming out of Community Scale, that projected demand is for our middle and higher income levels. So it's just food for thought for the council to consider with what you do with these revenues, potential revenues, is that you want to have some flexibility to at least support some home ownership, because at that income level, and that is our economic engine, we may want to consider that. But I just want to also close by saying our real property tax rate is like one of the lowest in the nation. So that's like the bottom line. And the bill has, as Chair had mentioned, a list of a number of exemptions. So, you know, collectively, again, applaud your hard work. I know that BFS wants to work with you on this, and they want to work out some of these issues, but I'm really happy to see that there are some models across the nation that we can look to and pieces of legislation, I guess, that have worked. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Mahalo, Director. I'll go to Councilmember Cordero first. Are you sure? Okay, Councilmember Toba.
Thank you, Chair. Question for Director. So when do we expect the consultant to be done with their report and ready to provide guidance to you?
Their agreement gives them a year to complete their project.
Years.
Roughly, yeah.
I think we kind of heard it from, you know, and it's just my comment. I think the issue we have is that, you know, we have low property tax, and that that's what's also attracting, you know, a lot of the out-of-state buyers. So how about we maybe make property tax a little higher and then make home exemptions higher also? That's just my comment. Thanks.
Okay, so real property tax rates, council members determine, you know, we propose.
Yeah.
And we propose in a way to balance the budget, yet be considerate of the taxpayer. So if we were to raise across the board, I think that would be a council decision to do that. Exemptions, you know, we're sort of moving exemptions higher with inflation. I think we're on a very strategic basis. We're going to continue to increase exemptions. The question that we have in administration is that are all of the different exemptions still needed? Mm-hmm. You know, that's the question we have. So yeah, your questions are good, but it's going to be a joint effort to kind of figure out, you know, what the middle ground is. What I don't know right now is that even with Bill 46, you know, and the high prices of homes, and as a result, the high assessed valuations, because we have a mass appraisal methodology, right? When we do our, will that be impacted materially immediately? I don't know. It may not be impacted at all for a while. It may take a while for things to sort out. So we're going to continue to have high prices, I think, at least for the near future, even if the bill is adopted. Awesome. That's what I speculate. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Director. Let's see. I'll just note it is a little after 3:45. I know Councilor Okimoto had a question, then we'll come back to Councilor Cordero for a discussion as well. And then just throwing it out there, I am open to, you know, postponing, but my preference would be to amend it as we already discussed, and then have a discussion at future committee meetings. But again, up to the committee. And so I'll turn it over to Councilor Okimoto.
Thank you so much, Chair. I actually had a question for Director.
Either one is good.
Yeah. Is that okay if I can get Housing Director, if I could get Denise Isara Matsubara up here? I just wanted to thank you for what you shared earlier. And this may be a question that you can or can't answer, but I really always appreciate your insight. I know that I've shared the same sentiments with you when we're approving projects. Although the rental market is important, we know that in order for us to, again, receive the revenue that we need to generate, we need that comes through real property taxes, so that comes through home ownership. So I was just wondering if you had any, I know that this bill, you know, kind of gears more towards asking questions to Director Kawano, but if you have any suggestions for us in looking at this, the things that are being proposed, I know that you understand the intent, and I think we all agree with the intent of what we're trying to do is there, but looking at what we're trying to do right here, did you have suggestions? Because we have the base model, and then we have the CD. So what would be your suggestions on how we could make this measure the best moving forward?
Well, I think, you know, I really technically have to defer to Director Kawano. This is his area. But just from a housing standpoint, I think this has to be considered. It's got to be, like I said, a portfolio. You got to have a toolbox solutions, because we are in a housing crisis. The time is like now, and Director Kawano is going to be working on this. It's a daunting task for them. There are models within the United States that we're learning about, but this has to be looked at in conjunction with other strategies, right? So the tax is just one of them. Giving more predictability to the whole development process, and this is one of the strategies, a bunch of the strategies that we're going to be working on with DPP. Improving predictability should reduce the time to develop and hopefully reduce cost. We have to create a trust and enabling environment with our development partners to really reach deeper affordability for longer periods of time. So, what in the way of policy can we standardize in terms of exemptions instead of this long negotiation that costs time? So to answer your question, tax is one way, subsidies we do, but we don't have endless subsidies that we need to really make more affordable housing happen. So it has to be by policy. It has to be by things under our own control, like updating our own rules. The land use ordinance is a great example. We're going through that process now, right? Decades. It needs to be updated. The densities have to be looked at. We have to invest in infrastructure. So there is a whole host of things that we need to look at. But admin rules is the easy one because it's under our control and we need to look at that. So to answer your question, there's a whole host of them. I'd love to spend time going over. I will eventually when we give you our annual update. So thank you for
Thank you so much, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Floor Leader.
Thank you. For discussion, I just want to say thank you for your proposed amendments and allowing for the explanation, and especially for addressing the exemptions as well. I know that I'm not a voting member, but I would urge you to push this bill forward, even with either amendments or not, but I would support looking at it in its entirety when it comes to the next committee, the Budget Committee. I do want to reiterate again that it doesn't make sense for me to commit a percentage to dedicated or locked up funding if we expect the funding or the collections to decline, and if the incentive is to fill and build. And for this tax, we need to focus on getting the tax out, implemented, and that's what we do as a city. We use our city and county taxpayers' money to provide support for where we live, and everything else. And when we get people in homes, we need to be able to provide support for our core services, to provide for that movement, to provide for the support and foundation and infrastructure, even if it's not new infrastructure. Our current capacity is old and just not good. And with that, I just hope that we can continue this discussion, and I really appreciate your thoughtfulness. Thank you.
Well, Floor Leader, and just so I know, since Sunshine and where we are, it sounds like your primary concern is the allocation.
Thank you. Yes, yes.
Okay. Oh, no, that's good to know. Okay. I'll do a vote, and then however it turns out, we'll go, so everyone can vote however they want. So I'm going to recommend first that Bill 46, 2024 be amended to the hand-carried CD1, identified as OCS 2024-0777, submitted by myself, and as amended as discussed orally. I'll go ahead and just do a roll call, just save time. Councilmember Kiaina.
No.
Okay. Councilmember Okimoto.
Reservations.
Okay. Councilmember Toba.
No.
No. Okay. And then that would be me, would be yes. And then we don't have Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. And so I'll just make a motion to, let's see. I'll double check. Oh, and I'm going to make a motion to postpone. Yeah. I think I made that clear earlier, right? No. Okay. So the chair's going to recommend the action on Bill 46, 2024 be postponed to a date and time to be determined by the chair. Any discussion, objections to postponing? No. Reservations? No. Okay,
Wait,
so
I'm
ordered.
sorry, Sir, Chair. I would prefer that we vote on the underlying measure.
Duly noted. So ordered, and we'll move to agenda item number 7. For action, Bill 47, 2024, establishing dedications of real property as Aina Kupuna and providing petition requirements to qualify for the dedication. Members, we have a posted CD1 to the bill that I submitted. For your information, a summary of the amendments is posted on the agenda. Council Chair Waters and I introduced the bill. Chair Waters, would you like to provide any comments?
I'll defer to you for comments.
Okay, I'll go ahead and note due to time, we have Director Kawano present today. Did you have any comment or anything you wanted to share with the committee?
Thank you, Committee Chair Weyer, Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. We actually submitted written testimony. If you want me to read through it, I will. If not, we've turned it in. And in a nutshell, at a higher level, we have concerns about the bill. We think that technically it needs some work with regard to having program requirements that we can implement. Our staff are not experts in determining the history of legal ownership of property, because there's an 80-year look back, right, in one of the clauses. Our staff also may encounter difficulty in ensuring at least one owner or a member of various boards or shareholder is a resident of the city for the duration of the dedication, because you can be a corporate entity and own the property. So we ask that those kinds of requirements get looked at. On paragraph D1 of page 3, the language relating to penalties and interests from the 2026-2027 tax year is not needed, since the effective date is the beginning of said tax year. Additionally, penalties and interest should be fairly applied to unpaid balances of this program. As such, BFS recommends removal of the paragraph. We also, to Councilmember Kia Aina's comments earlier, this measure would be better to be discussed in PIG holistically with all of the other active bills that we have that reduce tax revenues. And I'll take questions from here. Yeah.
Mahalo for that. I'll add some during discussion. I thought maybe we could go to testimony just because I know we had folks waiting, and then we'll come back into discussion. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll go to online testimony. I believe Ms. Chu, are you still present?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead and proceed when you're ready, and then Ms. Iwasa after.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair and members of the committee. If there's anything we do at all with our property tax, we absolutely have to finally, this is the time right now to do something to take care of our kupuna. The rapidly increasing rates consistently are putting them out. This absolutely gives a great head start to families being able to retain their properties and hold on to them. Our kupuna did it right. They worked all those years. They've come to a stage in their life. They shouldn't be working. They shouldn't be trying to survive. They should actually be living. This is not a new bill. It has been done, so we know it can be done. It's been done in Maui. I had this conversation with Mr. Takara at Director Kawano's office, and there was little knowledge about this bill, which was a little shocking, but it is implemented, and it has been put into place in Maui, so we know it is doable. I do understand that there's many aspects that can be cleaned up. One of them being, I believe, the 80-year ownership. I think we could amend that a little, because people on Oahu, we don't have A lot of those legacy owners are gone now. They did not get that opportunity. They've moved or passed on. So I think we do have room to reduce that requirement a little to adjust to the people and the kupuna who have owned their homes for maybe 50 years and want to pursue that and send it on to their children later. I think it's a fair ask. I think it's well overdue. And I'm very encouraged and very happy to continue this conversation and see this through. Thank you.
Thank you. Mahalo for your testimony. See no questions. Question from Vice Chair Kiaina.
Aloha, Rachel, nice to see you. I have a question with regard to scope. There are a lot of, just because of Hawaii's land tenure history and the acquirement by a lot of families after the Great Mahele, who are title holders of land, and many who are rich. We are not intending to have them benefit from this measure, are we? How do we delineate between local families versus people who have been here for a long time, but they're rich? And they were rich because they were able to acquire a lot of land during the political turmoil.
I completely understand, and I've thought of this exact situation many times. As I look through the RPT website, I believe that there is means to research the history of the actual land, the title holder. And I mean, I'm not going to say that this is easy, and there's definitely work to clean it up. But I do share that same concern. The intent would be to ensure that our local families are able to retain it. And how we measure that through the research of their history will be the initial work within this process. But I do think it's doable. But I do agree with you.
Got it. And then do it, of course, in a constitutional capacity. So then I have to ask the other question, because it's going to come up. You're not just talking about Native Hawaiians. You are talking about Native Hawaiians and Kama'aina family, correct? You're not just talking about Native Hawaiian families, because if you were, then all you'd have to do is get the definition for traditional and customary rights to have a definition that is constitutional. That's just what I'm saying. If it's to include Kama'aina families, then you would have to look at a different mechanism to try to figure out how to fit the parameters of this measure. But anyway, thank you so much for being an advocate for Kama'aina families.
Yes, thank you so much.
Mahalo, Ms. Hachu. And then if you could just repeat, just so I'll have it for later discussion, some of the amendments you were mentioning.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. No.
Oh,
Ms. Hachu. Yeah. Raquel. Sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, am I there?
Yeah.
I did submit it in my written testimony as well, considering an adjustment to the time frame of the ownership, as well as the commercial purpose. I think that will come into play also because if our kupuna are on ag land that they've had forever, we might come into an area where commercial purpose might be warranted because it would be a requirement depending on how the LUL comes out. As well as, I think if your property's in an LLC, obviously, and it doesn't make the time frame of its commercial entities, I think we need to revise or research whether those are valid criteria to be part of this program. I did reach out to Maui County, and I haven't heard back yet to see how they've implemented the program in its full effect. Because it has been in existence there since, I believe, 2021, they did implement this bill.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you for your testimony. We'll go to Ms. Iwasa if she's still on. Natalie, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Natalie Iwasa for the record. I just have some comments. So this bill requires a family have owned the property for at least 80 years. And it seems to me, as was kind of mentioned, that there aren't very many properties that actually fall into this category, but this would require a lot more paperwork for the Department of Budget and Fiscal Services to handle. These dedications also require a rollback for, you know, a long time, 10 years, and this really isn't reasonable. I ask you to change that penalization there. And then I had a question on the sale. So if it goes to somebody other than a descendant, that automatically takes them out of the program. But does that mean that the buyer then is responsible for the tax? It's not real clear to me. And the other last comment I wanted to make is that, you know, you're looking at this several bills here, and all of them make the system more complex. They require more time by BFS. They require more time by the taxpayers. And an easy solution, in my opinion, is to just remove a lot of those exemptions, because you can get millions of dollars put into our system by doing that. It's low-hanging fruit, in my opinion. So those are my comments. Thank you, Chair.
No, mahalo. Appreciate you holding out. I know it's been a long day, or afternoon rather. No registered testifiers in person. Ms. Young, it looks like you're going to testify, so go ahead and proceed when you're ready. We're on the Aina Kupuna tax bill.
No, I'm not going to testify.
Okay, mahalo. Appreciate it.
There's another one after this, right?
Okay.
48.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else wishing to testify? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close testimony. And looks like committee's having a discussion. So if I could ask Director Quano real quick, I had a question earlier that came up when I was talking to, or when I heard Councilmember Tolba's and Councilmember Okimoto's. I'm wondering, like, what if we just got rid of all the dedications, all the exemptions, and then just picked a low-income tax rate that was like acceptable, and so everyone at that just paid 3% of their income, and then like, of course, if you're making like a few $1 million, like it, right? Like, I mean, is that crazy? You know what I mean? Like, say we made it like 150, like household makes up to 150,000, their property tax is capped at 3%. And then everyone else.
Well, it's going to be tough, right, to do that, because there's nonprofits, and we've talked about the fact that some nonprofits shouldn't get the exemption because they operate like a business. But there's nonprofits. You have the exemption for projects for low-income rentals. So how do you difficult to take those away, I think.
Yeah. Okay, that answers my question.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I mean, if you just look at some of the programs.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councilmember Tolba.
Since we got his attention, and I think this is in discussion, what do you thought about Mr. Tree's comment that talked about the 1%? I don't know if you remember. I mean, he talked about,
the testifier that talked about a cap.
Yes.
Going back to Bill 46.
Right. Sorry.
We were having a side discussion in the back, and we thought that should be looked at too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
You know, because some of the U.S. cities, from what I saw, I mean, I only have information on a handful. They have a capped empty homes tax. Right. It's not based on a percentage. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Chair, we'll go in discussion. We finished testimony. I wanted to welcome your input. I know Raquel made a few suggested amendments. We could contemplate orally. We could, and then I could put it up, and then of course try to move it out, or we could keep it tied to the vacant home tax. I mean, I know where the goal is to get all these over to budget, where budget can address them.
I'll defer to you if you're prepared to make an oral amendment.
Yeah,
that'd be fine.
So I think it would be changing the 80 years to 50 years. And I just share this because I think it would maybe give BFS a little more direction on what to provide any data that's needed on too, like if we're talking about actual impact. And then was going to remove just looking for it, where the owner can also be an LLC. Is that sufficient? Okay, so it looks like that passed OCS muster. Was there any other discussion from the committee? No, okay. So I was gonna go ahead and move that Bill 47, 2024 be amended to the posted CD1 as identified, CD1 identified as OCS 2024-0770 and as further amended as discussed orally. Any discussion, objections, or reservations to the amendment? Seeing none. Okay, amended to the CD1. Chair is going to then recommend that Bill 47, CD1 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing pursuant to its consecutive referral will be referred to the Committee on Budget. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Okay, hearing none, so ordered. Perfect, mahalo. And I do want to say mahalo to Board of Water Supply. I know that we have the info briefing at the end, and so it's been, as I mentioned before, a good discussion, but lengthy afternoon. We'll come to agenda item number 8 for action. Bill 48, 2024 addresses Oahu's housing crisis and high cost of rental housing and provides a mechanism to support local residents through reducing taxation of real property used as a long-term residential rental. I want to defer to the introducers of the bill, Council Chair Waters and Councilmember and Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, for any explanation you wanted to offer or discussion.
Thank you so much. The idea here is that if you provide your home to be rented long-term, then you get the homeowner's exemption as if you live there. The question is, and look for guidance from Director Kawano, that what kind of revenue are we going to lose if we pass this without any revenue generating ordinances or bills? Thank you. But it's a way to help the renters, as my constituent Natalie Iwasa brings up a lot about helping the renters. But there's no guarantee that the landlord will pass that on. We got to hope that they do, but it's an effort to do exactly that. Thank you.
I appreciate the sentiment. We can go ahead and go to, if BFS did submit communication. I know the conversation will continue. Later in discussion, we'll let the committee ask questions and have discussion. We'll go ahead and go to testimony. And do we have any registered in person? I don't believe we do. Ms. Young, if you want to go ahead and proceed. Anyone else wishing to testify in chamber, please make your way to the front row behind the current testifier.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES, wishing to comment. So real estate property tax is important. It's an important discussion to supporting city services. For example, sin tax. Taxes from smoking and drinking are to support public services. So I'd be interested in learning through the process of a PIG hearing to explore these ideas and details. And also this will provide time where I can ask my real estate teacher, because he always talks about legal ownership of real estate markets. And also, I'm curious to find out what the value of a property is if the tax fluctuates, and what happens on farmlands if they get a special property tax, or the different classifications of property, and how they're taxed, how it will affect the buyers, the city's citizens, and how does it affect their decision-making in the marketplace, right? So if there's a PIG hearing for a deeper discussion, I wish to comment, I'd appreciate it, yeah.
Thank you, appreciate that insight. See no questions for the testifier, no one else in person. We'll go to online. First, Linda Howe. You can unmute and proceed. Identify yourself when you're ready. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. I am Linda Howe. I want to thank Committee Chair Weyer, Council Chair Waters, and Vice Chair Kia Aina for taking this first effort to try to right the wrong for the residential aid threshold never being increased in the last 8 years. We've come to where we are today because of that. I did submit written testimony in support of this effort of Bill 48, but I do have concerns, and that's why I'm speaking to you briefly this afternoon. My comment is focused solely on that 10-year dedication requirement, which then if you do not reach 10 years of having your property in bona fide long-term rental, all of your previous tax savings are taken away and you are subject to a 10% increase, 10% penalty. So I think that 10-year dedication period is way too long. I think that if you would make it 2 or 3 or 4, that you would find a lot of people who would be willing to say, yes, absolutely, we will keep renting long-term. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony and your insight.
Just some comments for her.
Okay, Councilmember
Ms. Howell, thank you so much for being an advocate. And
you're welcome.
So we are going to be taking your concerns into account because we want a bill that works, number one. Second, you should know that it's not lost on me with regard to increasing the threshold. It's at $1 million now, and there are other measures moving that would increase it minimally to 1.3 and have different tiers. So I just wanted to thank you for showing up today.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you. Mahalo.
Mahalo again. Thank you. And then next we'll go to Natalie Iwasa. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Natalie Iwasa for the record. Just some comments on this. I think this is a well-intended measure, but it may not be effective. You know, and the city currently has an affordable housing dedication available for long-term rentals. You might want to ask BFS how many properties fall into that, because I don't think that there are many. I think the documents that the city requests are too onerous, and in some cases, they don't even apply to the properties that are going to be dedicated. In BFS's testimony, they indicate that they potentially may lose $135 million from residential A. To me, this just shows how dependent the city is on that classification, and it's no wonder that rent has increased for people across Oahu. Other comments I have are that many properties are leased through property management companies, and so the lease is made with the property management company and not the direct owner, so I wasn't sure how that would play into this. With respect to paragraph C, the owner must provide evidence of the rental being long-term. This typically would be a lease. And we have on the other side homeowners who occupy their homes who only have to say, yes, I'm living in it. They don't have to provide any documentation. So why is there this disparity in the way we treat people who are dedicating their properties?
Mahalo.
May I just make a couple more comments?
I'll just ask you to summarize. It is 4:17 and we have multiple items. I know you're a little over your time, but I'll let you summarize.
Okay. I disagree with the penalties that are out there. And I ask that the council ask the BFS how many properties are falling under not charitable that are not charitable, because that really is the area I believe we can get a lot of money. So thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no, appreciate that insight, Ms. Iwasa. Seeing no questions. Jim Tree, I believe I see your hand up. Are you wanting to testify? If so, please proceed.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Jim Tree. It's a little bit ironic to me that we're talking about giving a tax break to people that will rent long-term so they save some money. That's great. I'm all for it. But the ironic part is that if Bill 46 passes, and they rent long-term to somebody that's not their primary residence, the rental, they're going to have to pay a $30,000 empty homes tax. So this is how it works. So you rent long-term, say, to a military family for a year. You have a year lease, maybe a 2-year lease. But that military family has a home on the mainland as their primary residence. So under the empty homes tax, Bill 46, it says that if you rent long-term to a renter, you only get an exemption from the empty homes tax if that renter considers that home they're renting to be their primary residence. So there's no way it can be the primary residence if they have another home, even though they stay there for a year. So the guy saves $1,000 on the rent on this Bill 48, but he loses $30,000 on Bill 46. So that's one thing I think you need to look at. Bill 46 is changing that, take that out of there. It has to be the primary residence. The 6 months rule's fine, but it has to be their primary residence or it doesn't count and they don't get the exemption. So that, I think those things don't jive with each other.
Mahalo for your testimony. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none. Appreciate that insight, and I definitely understand where you're coming from. Again, we're confined to what's on the agenda, but I think that there is room to interpret the definition, especially in the CD, but we can definitely look at ensuring that there's no conflict. If anyone else online wants to testify, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close testimony and then have discussion. Yeah, any questions or discussion?
Chair, thank you. And thank you to Chair Waters for introducing this measure, which I co-sponsored. I also, in reading the bill, I just thought we'd move it forward and have a discussion, but I did have concerns over 10 years. It's a very stringent dedication requirement. And so I'm open to offering an oral amendment. And so I wanted to engage with the chair to see if he was open to a 4-year dedication.
I'm open to that, yes.
Yeah.
So Chair,
I'm certainly open and welcome input. Yeah. Sorry, and just to repeat, so would the preference be to pass it out and discuss it further in budget?
Yes, to pass it out, but modify the year from 10 to 4 years.
Okay, prior to passing it out.
Yes.
Okay. So when I make my motion, it would be to amend as orally discussed as well. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'm ready to make my recommendation. So, Chair is going to recommend that Bill 48, 2024 be first, I'm going to recommend that it be amended to as discussed. Any reservations, objections? To a CD1 as discussed. Any objections, reservations, discussion, hearing none, so ordered. Then Chair is going to recommend that Bill 48, 2020, Bill 48 CD1 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing, and pursuant to its consecutive referral, be referred to the Committee on Budget. Any discussion, objections, or reservations?
Reservations.
Reservations from Councilmember Okimoto. Okay, hearing no others, so ordered. Mahalo, and then this brings us to our last item of the day. Mahalo for everyone's patience as they come up to present. Yeah, Chair Waters, were you staying as well?
Yes, I'll stay.
Okay, so I know Councilmember, yeah, just trying to appoint for quorum because I see Vice Chair standing up. So I'll just note first, it's an informational meeting, agenda number 9. Item number 9, and then Chair. I guess we can appoint Chair to committee if you're amenable. Yeah. This Board of Water supply update on crude oil detection at shuttered IAEA well, and it's also Departmental Communication 615. I'll turn it over to you, Manager and Chief Engineer, and also Deputy Manager. Mahalo for being here.
Thank you, Chair, and. Just for a correction, this is not crude oil detections, but it is a chemical that could be found in crude oil or other types of fuels. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, also called polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons. We detected it for the first time in May and in June of this year in our IAEA wells. IAEA wells is one of 3 wells we shut down shortly after the contamination, the Navy contamination of their water system for Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. So it's been turned off since December 2021. And we wanted to do a short presentation, but for the sake of time, I'll just go ahead and start. So PAH is a complex mixture of different compounds, and they're pretty persistent in groundwater. They don't degrade very readily. The detections are the first time that we found it, since we've been testing for PAH since December of 2021 or January of 2022, and we've been testing on a weekly basis. There are actually different detections, not only at the Board of Water Supply's IAEA wells in this June timeframe. So we noticed that there's a Navy monitor well that's about half a mile away from our IAEA wells, also on the same IAEA side of Halava Valley. They also detected very similar types of PAH chemicals, some of which are in the same concentrations. So that occurred at the same time. So because of the detections, we did send a letter to the Department of Health and the US EPA back on July 8th. And we did receive a response on August 9th from the Department of Health and EPA. And we're working on the responses to their questions. They actually came back with a number of questions asking for more information. It's important to note that if you looked at the Navy's Safe Waters website and looked at their environmental test results for groundwater monitoring, that you'll also find detections of PAH at other monitor wells, particularly around the fuel tank locations. Coincidentally, back in May of 2022 in Mauna Loa Valley, which is to the east of the fuel tanks, the underground fuel tanks, we did detect PAH chemicals in our monitor well called DH43. And I believe we presented to the council at the time. And so when you look at that, this is not the first time that we've seen PAH, but the concerning thing about this situation is that this is the first time we've detected it about 2 miles to the west of the fuel tanks. People ask me, are you sure it's from Red Hill? And I know the Navy and the Department of Health and EPA, they're kind of contending that it is not. But this is all that I know for sure. When you think about PAH, and it can come from fuel, where has there recently been large fuel leaks that I'm aware of in this whole area? And I kind of point back, since we've been on the Red Hill issue for now over 10 years, the first leak occurred, at least to my knowledge, that I'm aware of. Actually, there's been more leaks, but those are some of the older leaks. The recent leaks are 2014, 27,000 gallons from tank number 5 over at the Red Hill Fuel Facility. Then in May of 2021, near tank 20 of that underground tank farm of 20 tanks, they had a pipeline that connected to that tank burst open and dumped nearly 20,000 gallons of fuel on the floor of the lower access tunnel that connects, brings the pipelines, fuel to and from Pearl Harbor through the pipelines that run in that lower access tunnel. And unfortunately, some of it got caught up in a drain line that for their AFFF, or their firefighting foam system, that drain line contained fuel and water mixtures for months. And then around November, shortly after, around Thanksgiving of 2021, November 2021, that drain line was broken. A valve broke on that drain line and it dumped fuel right above their drinking water source. And in a very short time, that fuel and water mixture seeped down through 80 feet of unsaturated rock and got right into the drinking water source, and that ended up polluting or contaminating the Navy's water system. So those are the things that I know of. If anybody can provide information, particularly the Navy or the EPA or the DOH, on other fuel leaks or spills, other definite sites of contamination that could be the source of this detections in our IAEA wells, but also in their Navy monitor wells located near St. Elizabeth's Church, then I'm all open to hear that. But we wanted to let the council know. So the big unknowns are, is this related from the Red Hill facility? Is the groundwater in the underground aquifer flowing westward across Halava Valley like we've suspected from over 10 years ago, and nobody really has a definitive answer yet? And since we detected it at our IAEA wells, could it continue to move further westward and start to impact other BWS wells? So we're kind of looking at that. And our objective is not to put this type of contaminants into our water system, to take a very cautious approach in preventing that. Some of the discussions have come up publicly and we've informed the community too and asked. Our options now are for the nearest BWS pumping well that supplies drinking water to our community, to the AIEA Halava community. That's our Ka'amila wells. What are our options to make sure that these contaminants don't get pumped inadvertently into the water system of that community? And some of the options include shutting down another well, Ka'amila wells, installing a treatment system. A long-term option is to develop a well, which we're trying to get the permits to drill a new well in AIEA in the Newtown area to help replace the capacity that was lost because of the shutdown of the first 3 wells. So all options are on the table. Before we make a decision to say shut down a 4th well, we will be sure to inform the council. And I'll just let you know and the community know that our decisions are being weighed very carefully. They're not easy decisions because this AIEA Halava community used to have 4 wells supplying the community from Iwa Ena Street area, the district park, Halava, all the way out to Waimalu. We only have now 3 wells remaining, or 2 wells that are still operating in that system. We had to turn a well, Ka'amila wells that used to serve Honolulu. We had to now change that to supply that AIEA community. So there are 3 wells. But if we shut down a 4th well, there will be only 2 wells left serving that community. So that's how weighing in our decisions on going forward. I'm available for any questions. We have the presentation. I won't go through it unless you need to see it, but you can post it on your website later.
Mahalo, appreciate that. I see there's some questions from the committee. Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Chief Lau. I was just wondering, you mentioned if it goes out to 2 wells, so it's down 4, it went from 4 to 3, and if we go down to 2, how long would that, what would that look like? How long would that be sustainable? And you said that would be for that part of the community. What would that look like, and how long would that be sustained?
So I mentioned earlier that this Ka'amila wells, which is located near AIEA High School, about 2,000 feet to the west of our AIEA wells, that used to supply water to urban Honolulu, pumping water into a big pipe that leads eventually into Honolulu. Because immediately after we shut down AIEA wells and Halava wells for that community, the only wells that were pumping to serve the needs of that community was AIEA Gulch wells and our Kaunohi wells. Kaunohi wells is on the Pearl Ridge side of the system, the west side, and AIEA Gulch wells is further up the hill in the AIEA Heights area. And we were able just to be able to get by and meet the needs of the community. Although during periods of high demand, that's when we might have to go out with asking people to conserve water. So we had no redundancy, no backup well. In case a pump failed in AIEA Gulch wells, we'd be in trouble. That's why Ka'amila wells was very important. If we take Ka'amila wells out of service, then that'll put us back to a state of only 2 well sources serving the entire AIEA Halava community with no redundancy.
Thank you, Chair.
Mahalo. Any other questions, Chair Waters?
Thank you. Thank you so much for presenting today. So I just want to make clear what you're telling us today and make it as clear as possible so that the public watching and hopefully the news cameras too, that you found polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAH, chemicals in the testing in the AIEA well.
Yeah, and the AIEA wells are off. They're not pumping into the water system to provide people drinking water. We just turn on the pumps to draw water samples to test.
And PAH, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, typically are from oil, crude oil, or gasoline, right?
Crude oil, gasoline. They can also be generated when you burn things. Combustion can also generate PAH chemicals.
Yeah, and you found that in what otherwise was our drinking water.
Well, in the aquifer that we tap to supply drinking water to the community, and right now only at the location of IAEA wells.
Right.
We're not finding at IAEA Gulch wells or Kaumila wells.
But as you pointed out, you never found it in that well before. This is the first time. Right?
And we've been testing weekly from 2021 to the present. And this is the first time in May and in June that we detected it. And then subsequent samples taken from that well, we have not detected it. So that's why we wrote to the Department of Health saying that we suspect that there could have been like a plume or slug of contamination moving in an underground aquifer, because the water in our aquifer is always moving in different directions. And we know based on the top of the aquifer, the elevation above the top of the aquifer, that on the Red Hill side, it's at about 18 feet above sea level. As you get toward the IAEA area, it drops lower to about 16 feet. So we know that water flows from higher elevation to lower elevation. So we think that there could be a flow direction in the underground aquifer, in the porous lava rock, in the cracks and crevices, that could be generally in the westerly, northwesterly direction.
And isn't it true that the Kaumila wells that are currently servicing our local communities are in fact in the western direction from the IAEA well where we found
You are correct, Chair. That is, they're about 2,000 feet to a half a mile to the west. So that's why that's our concern. We looked at the Navy's previous groundwater modeling efforts that they submitted to the EPA and DOH, and they did some modeling, groundwater modeling, and they also did something called particle track modeling. And in those models, which we have a map, maybe Erwin, you can bring that map up. Yeah, the colorful one, that one.
Right.
You can see the fuel tanks outlined in that black outline. That's the parcel, and the black dots are the tanks underground.
And real quick though, you first found these PAH chemicals near where the fuel tanks were, right?
Yes.
And now you're finding it more west in the AIEA Halava shaft. Right.
Our first experience with detecting PAH chemicals was back in May of 2022 at a monitor well in Mauna Loa Valley, just about maybe 1,500 feet near on the Mauna Loa side of tank number 20. So that was the first time we had experience detecting PAH chemicals.
Right, and again, just to reiterate, the concern is that if you first found it near the tanks, now you're finding it in IAEA. If it keeps, the trend keeps moving, you could be found in Kaumila. And by the way, just to be clear, PAH is bad. You don't want to be consuming it, right?
Yeah, you don't want to be drinking it. It could be I think it can be carcinogenic, mutagenic also. The EPA only regulates one type of PAH. They have a drinking water standard for only one type. The others are not regulated yet, but there is concerns about it being in your body. Yeah.
And again, you're being very, I think, sensitive. But the fact of the matter is, if you use reason and common sense, these chemicals came from the spills from the Navy, right?
You know that's my opinion, Chair. I don't have all the evidence, and I think what this points to the fact that the investigation into what's happening underground, deep underground, hundreds of feet underground in that underground aquifer, because it's all connected from the Red Hill Kapukaki side all the way out to IAEA and beyond. This aquifer is all connected to each other. Our wells are like different straws in the same cup of water. So the concern is, how is that groundwater flowing? What is it carrying as it moves? What kind of contamination? And the fact also that in the month of June, later in that month, at a Navy monitor well they installed as part of the Red Hill investigation, just about a half a mile away, they also had detections of very similar types of PAH chemicals, and also some of those levels or concentrations were very close to what we saw in IAEA wells. So, that is, that's not a coincidence. So the recommendations, the requests that we have of the Navy and the regulators is to require them that they go to weekly testing of all their monitor wells. There's only a limited number of monitor wells that have been installed over the years because of the leaks at Red Hill. Most of them are located on Navy property. They've started to go a little bit outside of Navy property, but there's still big gaps of areas in the valley where there's no monitor wells. So that's like, you don't know what's happening underground, what's moving in the groundwater, what it might contain. So those are like blind spots. So in the meantime, I have to make decisions that are like the decisions we made back in 2021, in December 2021. When I first learned of heavy contamination of petroleum in the drinking water source of the Navy Red Hill shaft, and I came out and publicly announced that we would be shutting down Halava shaft, one of our largest sources for urban Honolulu all the way out to Hawaii Kai. And it was a very difficult decision, but I made the decision just on the side of caution, because I didn't want to inadvertently spread the contamination emanating out of Red Hill in the aquifer, or draw some of that and pump it into our water system, urban Honolulu. And we can still see that people are complaining about health effects of those people that are still living on the base, or have even moved off the base and are still complaining about health effects.
So at the very least, what you're asking perhaps is that the Navy conduct more tests, weekly in fact, on all of their wells. That way we can better track what's happening underground.
It gives us greater resolution. We don't have to wait till more wells get drilled, but we can actually gather more data because what we saw at IAEA wells, a week or two difference, we could have missed it. If we were testing only monthly, we may not have even detected it. It could have passed by. So the more frequent testing, I think, helps increase our resolution of what might be happening underground.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for today. This is super
Chair,
helpful.
if I could ask one more thing, one more ask here, is we know that there is PFAS contamination at Red Hill, at the Red Hill facility. And we know that in November of 2022, they spilled 1,300 gallons of AFFF firefighting foam concentrate liquid that contains about 3% of it containing PFAS chemicals. I asked, within about a month, I sent a letter to the Secretary of Defense asking him to immediately test for PFAS at all monitor well locations. My request is still pending. So part of the ask is weekly testing, not only for PAH, TPH, and the other chemicals that they're monitoring for, but also for PFAS testing of all monitor wells in the Navy property and outside the Navy property. Because those PFAS chemicals, the EPA just recently are regulating the first six of those chemicals. And those, some of them have also serious health impacts, cancer risk too.
Well, I'm sorry, when did you send the letter to the Secretary of the
I believe it was January of 2023, yeah.
Wow, okay. Wow, 2023, well over a year ago, almost going on 2 years pretty soon. Okay, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Yeah, mahalo again. I'll go ahead and go to testimony. No one online registered or unregistered. So go to in-person, no unregistered. I believe Ms. Young, you were gonna testify. And this is on the Board of Water Supply briefing, yeah?
Yeah, Angela Melody Young, testifying, wishing to comment. So polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons is a carcinogenic, which means it can cause cancer, and it's also a class of organic compounds made up of multiple aromatic rings and carbon atoms. They are uncharged, nonpolar, and planar, and many are colorless. So polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons can be found in the environment as such of the sooty, smoke, and ash environments, and can be the result of natural or man-made processes.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just gonna designate Chair Waters again as a member of the committee. Please continue.
Sure, and it results from high-pressure processes, natural events like forest fires, man-made practices like burning coal, oil, gas, wood, garbage, and tobacco. So it's very necessary to monitor environmental pollution caused by such elements. So we can check out the example of trash and waste incineration facilities, right? We can look at the EPA environmental impact statement for a North Atlantic incineration site design. This is an environmental standard from the federal level for facilities design to manage the environmental pollution from trash processors.
Thank you, Angela. I appreciate it. Mahalo.
Thank you.
See no questions and no other testifiers. We'll close testimony. Any other discussion questions? Just wanted to say mahalo again for the presentation, but really all the work you're doing every day to keep our water safe. Because we talk so much about housing today, but without water, we can't have housing. So mahalo. With that being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Mahalo.